Hello and welcome, I'm Westrum, and this is Copycat Theory, my first Deltarune theory video. It's also known as Shapeshifter theory. As you can see on the screen here, he's already biting. He's already here, guys. He's not a fraud. He's already working in the story, and he's going to be a lot more relevant in the future. This theory is going to show why. What spurred this video on is the recent Pink update made me realize a bunch of stuff, and nobody was talking about it, so I decided I wanted to make a video about it since I'm pretty obsessed with Friend. Now, you've got the questions here. You've got Asriel and Jockington, who are perhaps dead, just a question. And you have normal NPC here, also known as the Onion-san Butcher, recently. But perhaps he won't end up being so guilty, we'll see. I promise you haven't heard at least some of the stuff in this video. I watched loads of Deltarune theories, and this video contains many pieces of info I've never seen or heard before making it. This is my first theory video. I'll make more if it goes well. I'm also making a game, and I'll only make more theory videos if you like and subscribe, so please do that. My game has a lot of mystery and fun theories, so please stay tuned for that one. If one part of the theory is false, it doesn't sink the whole theory. Even if there's 20 parts of the theory that are false, it still doesn't sink it. You know, there can be good parts of a theory, bad parts of a theory, that's fine. So, if you think that your theory contradicts this one, it might not. So if I said that like Amalgamate theory exists, that doesn't necessarily eliminate Death Knight for various reasons that I'm going to go into. And there might be other theories like that. I don't ever make theories that are common. They will always be unlikely, but have a lot of overlooked evidence. So you're going to get a lot of quite wild claims, but also a lot of quite wild evidence. And I think that's just way more fun to focus on those theories rather than the same stuff that everybody's been talking about. This video is very long. I think it's like 4 hours or something. It's very info heavy. And so it's good second monitor content if you want to just listen to it. That's how I usually watch Deltarune videos. It's got a lot of side images. I don't really go through too much footage, but I'll do my best to describe the images so that you don't have to watch along, but at times I will say to look at the screen because there's an important image. Sometimes there is text I put on during editing on the screen for corrections and extra info, so keep it open if you can. I don't think this has solved Deltarune, but it does end up solving a lot if you do end up believing it. There is not enough info yet to draw proper conclusions on most things I say here. I contradict myself several times in this, and I'm not attempting to make all of my conclusions fit neatly together. I'm really just focusing on Toby's magic system and within Deltarune and what that magic system is going to mean for the broader game. Since we've pretty much already been given what the magic is. But people aren't really noticing it yet, and it has a lot to do with shapeshifting. The expected knowledge is all of the different images you see on the screen here. If you just see this, you can probably just skip ahead, but it's the... And I'm not going over this. So it's the new Chapter 5 post-update Pink, where she talks about cats and Friend. So you've got to be familiar with Friend, you've got to be familiar with the theory that normal NPC kills Onion-san and sells as takoyaki, with Amalgamates in Undertale's True Lab, and general up-to-date familiarity with the Knight's identity and the discourse surrounding that, such as after Chapter 5, it seems that no Knight candidate can carry Asgore. It just seems that he's too big. Kris Knight from the weird route seems to be ascending in popularity. Death Knight went from being probably the most popular theory by far to being seemingly impossible, but we'll get to that. And Rudy is too fallen down to be the Knight, seemingly, at this point, so he's knocked out too. Virus hasn't really lost any evidence, but, you know, he's hanging on there. What we'll find out here is why Friend is the copycat, who they might have replaced in Hometown, why normal NPC sold Onion-san, that magic is possible within the Light Worlds, and normal NPC is not the only killer in Hometown. More about the identity of the Knight, what the meat factory is, and lots more. Let's get into it. What copycat means. Friend is image friend. They are at the device layer of Deltarune. So they're at this higher layer because they're called in like all caps, which is what Gaster does. And there's not many people who, like, there's not many NPCs who are named like that, or many objects that are named like that. That's all within like the Gorna Maker and that kind of thing. So when you copy like a file or like on a computer, like an image or whatever, that means you can recreate it. You know, like I copied a billion files to make this PowerPoint. Everybody knows that. Now the cat command in Unix is short for concatenate, but you basically use this whenever you've got a file like what's on the screen here, memes.txt. If you had that and it had some text in it, like hello world or something, you would put that in, you'd put that command in, and it would print hello world to the screen. So it allows you to view the text of a file. You can use it as well to merge multiple files and view them together as well on the screen. And you can also use it to create text or append it to an existing file. So there's a lot of like data manipulation there. Text also frequently is used. It frequently uses the string variable within programming languages. The string variable type. The cat/puppet, the shared element in Deltarune. So cats have this association with strings and puppets have strings. Spamton, who uses cat puppet attacks, is associated with strings as well. There's a possible association with the phrase copycat killer, which is where, you know, somebody commits a crime like a murder and then somebody else commits a very similar one. Although I don't think that that's what's going on here. I'm just saying there's like a word association. Toby does weird things with words. Copycat is not only an understood loanword in Japanese, but it can also be made into a pun with maneko, which is what Pokemon uses for the move Copycat. It won't confuse the Japanese audience, which is important because he's making the game in English and Japanese. So, yeah, there are, you know, Deltarune has a really wide audience, but Toby said that these are the only languages that he like understands enough to make like an authentic translation. So yeah, for a guy who, you know, he uses wordplay and stuff all the time, like he feels, I mean, I'm speaking for him, so whatever, but he feels it's important to do that, to make sure that he's making the right wordplay. Programming, it like all uses English words, even if you're speaking a different language. For all the English onlys out there, you might not know that. So, for you know, for the programming audience, for the Japanese programming audience, they would also understand something like cat. All right, so here's where the theory really starts, because it started with me with this scene with Pink. I didn't pick up on any of this, like almost any of it, until I saw this scene, and you know, a lot of people like they were sort of excited about it, but they didn't make too many connections from this. It sort of seemed to go off a lot of stuff that we sort of already knew, I guess. But to me, this was extremely, extremely important. Because it just made me think about certain things, and then it got me down rabbit holes based on those connections. And I actually think that I think there's a reason why Toby didn't include this in the actual main game, because if he were to include it, you come up with all of these other connections, and I think he wanted to save that for Chapter 6. I don't think he wanted to have people sitting for a year and basically figuring out how important Friend is. Because Friend's going to be important, like very important. Okay, so this does technically assume that she talks about Friend, because I don't think she ever says, you know, image.friend or image_friend. She just talks about cats, but basically 95% plus of the audience is assuming that she's talking about Friend. There's like nobody doubting it, because Friend, to even get this scene, you need to be bitten by Friend, and you need the egg or whatever. So it's Friend, okay. So Pink tells us Kris has been bit by a cat before. Friend is not the mastermind, someone controls them. Friend is a group of cats, not just one. They love protein, and eggs are protein. Everybody's talking about that eggs are protein. But also meat is protein, okay? Flesh is protein. And there's a lot more protein in a body than there is in, you know, one measly egg. If you have any of it, it should be hidden, okay? There's no way to hide a body unless you hide yourself completely. Friend is very unlikely to give up on a target once set on them. They will bite them hard, okay? Biting is important. And friend is not smart. She says that. She says they are not smart. So we have to keep that in mind. Okay, so this is where things get kind of strange, I guess. I'm gonna go into it. So this is Baka Neko. It's not Baka Neko, which is like an idiot cat or something. Don't get confused with that. It means changed cat in Japanese. I found out about Baka Neko thanks to user MannedM on Reddit. The powers of a Baka Neko are shapeshifting, especially into humans, but sometimes other animals. For the sake of this, I would consider Deltarune monsters as human, because they walk on two legs generally, and they speak intelligently. Eating people, including things much larger than itself, taking on the form of its victims, speaking human language, walking and dancing upright on two legs, cursing powers, possession, acting as others, necromancy, and control of the dead. Which is like a, cat/puppet there. Interesting. Funnily enough, if you know Meowth from Pokemon, which I've got a picture of there, he is categorized as the Baka Neko Pokemon in the Japanese version. He's known as the Scratch Pokemon, I think, in English. Likely owing to his bipedal status, and in the anime, his ability to speak human language. I didn't know this before writing this theory. He takes on a far less sinister position, though, and doesn't shapeshift in the Pokemon anime. Okay, the next point we need to establish, because since Baka Neko are from Japanese folklore, we need to establish that Toby has knowledge of Japanese folklore to be inspired by it. And actually, before we go into that, I hope you notice that on that previous slide here, there are quite a few things that you might be seeing, I'm going to go into them, that seem relevant to Deltarune. There's a lot of like themes and powers which you might be thinking, well, hold on a second, have we kind of seen a little bit of that before? I hope you're thinking that, because we're going to go into it. So we need to establish that Toby would know about this creature. So he's consumed a lot of Japanese media, and he lives there now. He always has, seemingly, or at least from quite a young age. Touhou is a major inspiration for Toby, which is already used extensively in Chapter 5. He used a common trope already from Japanese folklore with the kitsune, which is the fox spirit that shapeshifts. That's the netskis. Baka Neko and related Nekomata are in Touhou. Toby is highly influenced by the games that he played in his youth. And as all theorists should have learned from Chapter 5, predicting what Toby does should be based far more on what shaped his youth, and a lot less on necessarily going into detail on every little mystery in the story so far. I'm still sure that plenty more is going to come up in Chapter 6, so that's what the theory is going to be about. Now we get into the Touhou influence, and this is a character named Chen, who is a Baka Neko as well. So this just seems like a random character. It's like, what the hell does this have to do with Deltarune? Okay, trust, it's going to be important, and you'll see why. I'm barely aware of Touhou lore, I'm not some super fan or whatever. I've barely played any of the games. I just know some parts of it. I do like it, but most of this just comes from reading wiki pages, so if some of this is wrong, correct me in the comments and stuff. Ken is a Shikigami of Ran, who herself is a Shikigami of Yukari. Shikigami is a summon spirit, like a familiar. So it's like their servant, pretty much. There's a servant-master relationship. Friend seems to be familiar... Friend seems to be a familiar of Eram, who we presume is underneath Gaster. Hierarchically. The lack of intelligence is because she is a Shikigami of a Shikigami. So basically, the powers and control, they lessen the more servants you have. The lower down the chain. A Shikigami ordinarily shouldn't even be able to have a Shikigami, but Ran's pretty powerful. As is Yukari. So she's capable of human speech. She can use impressive black arts, but only possesses the intellect of a human child. So she's not very smart, and I'm just pulling these little quotes from the wiki. Chen is unreliable. Ran has issues with getting Chen to do what she asked properly. That might come into play with Friend also not being very reliable. When she becomes a regular Bakeneko, she becomes more feral and will resort to more physical attacks like biting and clawing with her long nails. So she bites. You know, that is pretty common with a cat, but she does bite. Chen's possession is removed if soaked in water, which she hates since she's a cat. So let's just keep that one in mind for later. I also found it funny, so on the screen I've just got pictures of Chen, right? I found it funny that in Perfect Cherry Blossom, which is a Touhou game, it's the first time she shows up, I found it funny that it was like, the recent snowstorm obscures your vision and the wind is constantly changing, and I was just thinking of the night with, you know, the winds changing and it being so cold and stuff. I don't think it has. I don't think it's got anything to do. I think it's just coincidence, but look, this picture might be a little bit more important later. You might start thinking that. So how do we know Toby even really cared about or noticed Chen? So you might think like, okay, yeah, he's a Touhou fan, maybe he's a Touhou super fan, but there's like a billion characters in Touhou. Why would he care about this random Bakeneko who's like a familiar of a familiar? It's like, okay, yeah, she's like a minor character. Why would he care? He might not even like keep her in mind whatsoever. Well, Toby, as I said before, Toby downloaded Touhou 7, Perfect Cherry Blossom, and that's where Chen originated, and that was when he was in middle school, so it's a long time ago. This is like a formative experience, I guess. He then played a rendition of Necrophantasia, which is a Touhou song, from Perfect Cherry Blossom. So he played that at his church's summer camp on the piano. This is the theme of Ran's master, Yukari, also from Touhou 7. Remember, Ran is Chen's master. And here's from an interview. This is like a translation of the interview, I believe. So, Toby's favorite Touhou character is Yukari, but back when he first found the series, it was Ran. Zun asks, why Ran? Kind of incredulously, and Toby just says she's very cute. So, that kind of blew me away when I found this out. That Yukari is his current favorite character, his absolute favorite, and Ran was his original favorite. So Chen is inseparable to Ran, she's her familiar, her Shikigami. So we know that Toby loves Yukari and Ran in particular, and I wrote almost this entire theory video before this knowledge, which is kind of crazy. Even though you don't know like what the full theory is going to be about, just keep that in mind. And I knew that Toby loved Touhou, and he had some idea of Japanese folklore, but I had no idea that his favorite characters would be so relevant. It's like, you know, in Deltarune, imagine if you were to say, imagine you said your favorite character was Susie, and then you met with Toby Fox, and Toby Fox helped you a bit on a game or something like that. And then somebody were to ask you like, oh, are you familiar with like with Noelle? Like, of course you would be. You would know everything about Noelle. Like, you'd be obsessed. You'd know plenty. Okay, so I'm just assuming here that that's also his relation with Chen. He knows what Chen is. He knows what Bakeneko are. And so I have come to this speculation here that there is this trio, one on each side, where Yukari could be the Gas allegory, Ran could be the Eram allegory, and then Chen is the friend. So you've got Gaster at the very top, who is the mastermind of the entire situation. He sort of sits in the shadows, doesn't really like to act directly too much, or like at all. Then you've got his familiar, which is Eram, and Eram does all sorts of stuff and has a much higher degree of intelligence. And then Eram has his own familiars, which he uses, and they're not too smart. So, Yukari is Gaster. Again, take this with a huge grain of salt because I'm not a Touhou fan. But I also thought that when I read this, I got mad, to be honest, because there is so much here which seems relevant to Gaster, where I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how... Like, surely there are Touhou fans in the audience. I've seen them. Like, I've seen so many of them, because with Chapter 5, they obviously knew about a lot of the references and stuff. But I've never heard of Yukari be compared to Gaster, and I've never... You can even search it up, Yukari Gaster, there's like nothing. But there are a lot of parallels, okay? So Yukari, it seems like she seems like the figure that we think that Gaster is. She's a mastermind character, like she's literally referred to as a mastermind on the wiki, with superhuman intellect. She rarely acts directly and doesn't reveal her true aims or goals. You know, kind of sounds familiar to a guy we think is a mastermind behind everything. He's clearly extremely intelligent as a scientist, and he never seems to pop up. He tries to remain in the shadows constantly and doesn't reveal what his true intentions are. She has the power to create gaps, which are basically portals that allow her to travel anywhere. And of course a gap is a space in between. It is a space in between. She can teleport anywhere and goes to spaces in between. Like, Mystery Man? Like, come on. This is just... It's just like in Undertale, where you go in between, like, the two rooms, and then eventually you find that there's a room in between them. That's where you find Mystery Man. And, you know, all of the Gaster is green and in between stuff. More than that, she has... This is her, like, her OP power. This is her thing, which can do so much, which is the manipulation of boundaries. So it's like boundaries as in the like concept of a boundary. It's not like... It's kind of hard to define how much she can do with that power, but it's quite powerful. So she can remove or create boundaries, like removing the boundary between day and night, creating an in-between state. And this is like a bit of a philosophical thing, right? But to define anything, you need to create a boundary around it. Like if you look at a tree, okay, there's nothing inherently that makes the tree separate to the sky in your vision. There's just nothing there. You construct that boundary just in your mind. You just say, okay, that's the tree, and the tree ends at these points, and then the sky begins. So she can basically break that down, and thus dissolve meaning, because when there's no day and no night, it's suddenly in an in-between state. This is just like how Sans, who's got the connection with Gaster, he makes the open and closed into clopen. And then suddenly it makes no sense. It's in this in-between state. So there's overlap between this and the roaring, which will unite darkness and light into one section. Like the fountains will flow, all of the darkness will come out, and there will no longer be any separation between the light worlds and the dark worlds. Yukari literally uses his power to manipulate the boundary between dreams and reality, which is like light world, dark worlds, to pull a character out of the dream world. 3 heroes appear at World's Edge. It's, you know, the edge of the world. It's pretty important for the prophecy. Clearly, if Gaster is someone who has found a way out of the world, he would use these exact same sorts of powers to do it. He'd break the boundary between the game and the device, make a gap to get through, like, into that. And you can see at the top of the screen there, it's got location somewhere along the boundaries of Gensokyo. Gensokyo is the world of Touhou. It's like, that's where all the yokai live, and they're like they're isolated from the human world. There's like a boundary in between them. She also weakened the boundary between life and death, making it possible for people to walk between the regular worlds and the netherworld and back. I think there's certainly something going on with Gaster and death and life and experimentation. I think something is there. What would we consider an amalgamate? Okay, that's kind of important. I'm not sure if we ever connect Gaster to amalgamates completely. I don't know if that was all just alphies, but regardless, there is the true lab-like connection there. But anyway, the boundaries of several creatures being eliminated and then recombined and then creating a new boundary around them, that's like an amalgamate, you know? You break the boundaries of like what something's identity is, and then you merge them together. I found this kind of funny because, you know, we had root lake stuff one time she goes to the lake, she sees a reflected moon and the real moon, and then she makes a division in order to like create a portal or whatever to the moon. Which I thought that was kind of cool because it's like with Noelle and Kris, the sun's behind them, they go into the lake and then they create a boundary break as well, seemingly break out of the world. She's widely acknowledged as the creator of the Great Hakure Barrier, which isolates again Sokyo from the outside world. So she's seen as like a pseudo creator of the Touhou world. She's not actually like a creator god, but that is like an important role. Yeah, like it's quite similar to Garster, right? Because we think, well, Garster is like the creator of the survey program. He's the creator of Deltarune, of like the hometown, it seems. There's a barrier around hometown. And overall, I think if you... Oh, and there's also a bunch of eyes in the picture on the screen as well. If you look at that within her gap portal thing there, which is sort of interesting because there's a lot of eyes in like the Chapter 1 Dark World and just in general around in Dark Worlds. Anyway, basically, if you just read Yukari's wiki page on the Touhou wiki, I definitely recommend it because you'll just see random things like this where you're like, hold on, if Garster had these powers, like it would make complete sense. Like the story suddenly like clicks into place, and you're like, oh, okay, so that's the kind of guy that he is. All right, makes sense now. And just remember, this character is Toby's absolute favorite from one of his all-time most favorite inspirational series. So he's definitely quite familiar with her. Alright, so this is Ran as Eram, so remember this is the Shikigami, the familiar of Yukari. So this connection, I couldn't really see like too much, you know, it seemed a lot weaker. But something that was important to this is that the way that Yukari speaks to Ran is she often like hits her in frustration and stuff like that, but which is what one of the images is, which isn't that relevant, but she treats Ran like she's like a tool. She's like it was really weird reading the wiki page with all of like the device theory stuff because she literally uses computer terms for some reason, like program or debugging. Like it's bizarre because it feels like that's what Garster would be doing with his familiars. If he's at this higher level, well then he's basically sending these things in as little autonomous programs, right? So that seemed to connect. Okay. So now we've got that out of the way, that Toby is familiar with Baka and Echo. We need to look at... Oh, he's both familiar, and the magic seems intertwined with a few of the other characters that he's inspired by, so... Anyway, so if Baka and Echo are in Deltarune, where are their powers used? So I want to ask this question because it's like, okay, well, sure, he might be inspired by Baka and Echo, okay, but we need to actually see their powers being utilized, otherwise it's just, like, whatever. Yeah, so if we can't find enough of them, well then there's no connection. And if we find substantial links to some powers, it gives more evidence for powers with only some evidence. So if we see, like, clear bipedal cats or something like that, and they're completely undeniable, right? Like, if you just see bipedal cats, it's like, okay, there's something there. Well then potentially the less clear evidence, such as maybe shapeshifting, will become more likely to appear in the future. So this is like identifying Mother 3 or Touhou as a source of inspiration. It's likely not just one thing from Mother 3 or Touhou. So like, you know, you see the bullet patterns in Undertale, which are inspired by Touhou. Toby says he's inspired by Touhou. We 100% know that. And then Chapter 5 ends up being like a Touhou chapter. It's, you know, it's quite clear that these things, they continually reappear because they're the ultimate source of what he's sort of building off of in his mind. And a lot of this stuff comes from, you know, 2011 when he had the dream, 2016, 2015 or whatever, as he's finishing up with Undertale, and prior to that. Yeah, once the first source has been identified, the second instance is more likely, and so on. So, as I said, we've got the dancing cats on 2 legs. you've got these little green guys on the screen, the little mic minigame cats, and the ones that are in the rare cats cat petters minigame on the Noelle side. It seems like a bit of a weird coincidence to have these cats which are on 2 legs. Like, you know, it does seem kind of funny, but I'm not really sure like what their purpose is. They are also dancing, and so as you can see on the right hand side, a bunch of other images which are important to look at. These are from traditional Japanese art, and these are Bakeneko. And they're doing a little dance. That's what they do. And they're up on the 2 legs, so yeah. The love of protein is another important one. So Pink mentions the cats love protein. Now in Japan, crude oil is scarce, and it always has been. Like, they didn't just like run out of it, it's just there's not much there. And petroleum wasn't used for fuel initially for lamps and stuff. They instead used fish and whale oil for their lamp oil. Now, meat is relatively scarce in Japan. They don't have a lot of farmland there. They still don't, and they never have. And so cats didn't get enough of it. Most of the Japanese diet is based on like grains and stuff like that, like stuff that's really efficient to farm in a small area like rice. But cats need meat, right? They're obligate carnivores. So they would lick lamp oil, which is made of the fish and whale oil, to get any kind of meat. Even if it's not protein, they're obsessed with the meat, right? Because they don't get enough. So imagine it's dark, and you're sitting around your lamp, and it's at night, and suddenly a cat approaches you from the dark, and it's sort of peering in at the lamplight. It's sniffing out some meat, and it's trying to go get some. So as it's peering there, and cats like to kind of sit back and wait to jump on their prey. They don't just rush at it. So it's sitting there, looking out, looking towards you in the dark. Its eyes appear in the shadows as the little image shows in the top right, and then it smiles with a little grin, knowing that it's going to get some fish oil. And so, of course, that looks a lot like Friend. And this is cited as like a source of inspiration for why Bakeneko do what the art here is on the screen in the traditional art. It's not like AI generated or whatever. It's from like the 1800s or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's quite reminiscent of Friend, right? So, of course, it seemed eerie and unnatural for a cat to be doing that. It seems like a little bit spooky. So they're considered as a yokai. Now, meat factories, okay, like the meat factory song from Undertale, which is hidden and associated with Gasta. It sounds like that would be of interest to cats because cats are very interested in protein, right? So there seems to be some association there. Oh, and if I didn't mention it before, but this traditional art, this is supposed to be like a lamp or whatever. So the cat is literally looking in at a lamp. That's what the art is. So now this is just an example story of a Bakeneko. Just to familiarize yourself about what these stories are like. So this is the tale of Takasu Genbei. So his mother's personality changed completely after the pet cat goes missing. His mother becomes distant. The family peeks in one day and sees a cat-like monster in his mother's clothes, chewing on animal carcasses. Takasu, sees this and he's like, okay, no, that's like creepy as hell. Like that's not the real mother. So he slays her, slays the cat monsters rather. And then he looks under the floorboards of his mother's room and finds the skeleton of his mother, bones gnawed clean of flesh. As we can see, eating and then living as the victim is a common trope while hiding the body. Now, perhaps you've already caught on, but this is this kind of thing that I think is going on with Friend. Now, shapeshifting within Deltarune. This part is saying that we already know that shapeshifting is a thing in Deltarune. And shapeshifting perfectly is a thing in Deltarune. And I mean perfectly in the sense of like the visual representation. Whatever you see on the screen, there's no distinguishable differences. So in the picture that I've got here, you've got the Netskis, and they can transform into a chest, and then when you open it, in this case they pop out as like a little Netski, and then they transform into a bigger Netski. But there's plenty of other places in the game where they straight up transform into a different object, and then they just poof into the real Netski. So we know that perfect visual appearances are possible, at least within the Dark Worlds. They do only transform into darkness and objects and plants, so technically we don't know if they can transform into lightness, but it's never mentioned that they can't do it. They're shown to be in packs together, like you get the whole bunch of them behind the curtain and all sorts of other places, like with the mushrooms at the start. They show up in packs, so that's pretty common. Foxes are common in Japanese folklore as expert shapeshifters, and they imitate humans routinely. There's a ton of overlap between the powers of a Bakeneko and the powers of a Kitsune, which is the foxes. So one issue that I had with this theory initially when I was first thinking of it is that shapeshifting in stories and being able to mimic other people, especially if you can do it perfectly, is a big issue. It's a very big issue, because the moment that you introduce that, you create a lot of paranoia around character identity, because if anybody can be anybody, you suddenly have to literally distrust everybody, and that does all sorts of things. Also, it causes all sorts of problems for a story if you have that. Even though I have that issue, okay, it doesn't stop so many authors from just doing this and not caring. And you find this all the time in stories. Like it's constant. Authors use all kinds of tropes that would just totally break sense if you think about them for a little bit of time. There's so many stories that say use ghosts completely inconsistently. This stuff just happens all the time, so you just kind of, it's like, okay, well, even if it did cause problems, it's like, okay, well, Toby could still use it, so. But I think that he has created some checks on this, which will make it not as big of an issue, and we're going to see those. So it's not going to be as ridiculous as we think it could be. I believe that these Netskis have been put there in order to plant the clue in the audience's mind that shapeshifting is a very real and possible power in the story. And this is important, because if you just reveal at the end of, like, if in chapter 6 or whatever, it was just like, oh yeah, the knight is the knight's Alphys, and the knight, you know, has shapeshifting powers, and you've never seen this before, that would be extremely stupid. Or if yeah, you're like. You can't do that, okay? You gotta tell your audience. You gotta say, yeah, guys, shapeshifting is possible. So you kind of gotta think about that. So I believe that that's what the Netski's role are, along with being a very common trope, much more common than Bakeneko are, at least in the Western mind, I think, as a shapeshifting Japanese folklore thing. I also believe the knight has been... Sorry, it's not believe. The knight has been shapeshifting. Okay, not perfectly, but they have been shapeshifting since Chapter 3, since we literally first saw them. They transformed into a ball and into a bird. So... But yeah, they just haven't transformed perfectly, so... Or like tricked us with their transformations. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but that's been going on. I'm adding this in post, but there are many other places where shapeshifting occurs. You've got Jevil, who says metamorphosis in his fight, and then he changes into, I think, various things in the fight. I can't really remember, but he definitely turns into his scythe, the Devil's Knife. And both he and Spamton, and I'm not sure about the others, but they definitely turn into items which you can take with you. And later on in Chapter 3, I think if you get I think it's... I can't remember, but one of the items with Spamton if you have that, well then you can get an extra scene with Spamton and Tenor. So they can transform into items as well. And of course, within the Dark World, Light World distinction, like when you take out an item from the Light World, like Lance is a card, you know, and as is a rules card. So, and you know, Shawm is a plush, that kind of thing. The darkness allows them to shapeshift, is the point here. And maybe most interesting of all is Ralsei, when he dies, he falls to the floor in a pile of clothes before reforming if he gets healed again, which is kind of interesting. Okay. So, where is the shapeshifting? In order to identify the shapeshifting, we got to look for signs of it. And how do you do that? You look for suspicious people. You look for people who are not acting like previous behavior to someone we know. And they've got to not be acting normally, more broadly, like a normal kind of person. So if friend killed and replaced someone, and they're not as smart as Pink said, we should be able to find people who are like that, but they're also screwing up in their mimicry because they just don't know how to do it. They're just not that capable of doing it. So I've got four candidates here. So you've got Jockington, who speaks very strange. You've got normal NPC, who also speaks very strange, also acts very strange. The Roaring Knight, who has the sort of shape-shifting ability, and we don't know the identity of. Then we've got Ralsei, who is... it seems like Asriel, right? I don't think that Ralsei is like a completely evil creature, so don't like click off the video thinking, oh my god. Okay, but we do have to go over each and every one of them, okay? Because it's important, you know? Ralsei does look like Asriel. Okay, now we get into the fun part of the theory. Jockington. He is the first candidate that we're going to be looking at for who might be a potential shapeshifter. I've put here that he's the tail of hell, maybe. And he's the most popular character, according to Toby. So, Jockington has barely any lines in the game. He's, I think it was like 49 or something. Maybe he got some, maybe that was like an old count. Might have like 60 or something. It's like, it's not many, okay? So, I think I'm going over either all of them or pretty much all of them. Because there's not that much to go off of. Despite that, Toby says that he's the most popular character in the actual game world. He speaks in such a weird way that it just has to be meaningful. Even if it's not, even if this theory isn't correct, there's something there, like, just has to be. He's mentioned multiple times by Toby outside of the game, so despite seemingly being just a random, like, side character, it'd be like if Toby was randomly mentioning, like, one of the random NPCs from the diner who, like, neither of us can even name or picture. Because they're that irrelevant. So it's not like that. So he's included in the prophecy with Jockington grows the beard. Seems a little bit strange, like why is Jockington included? The only other comparable thing is like Lance, you know, says toothpaste and then says boy or whatever. I can't remember the one, but that's the other joke one. But the other ones are like all seemingly like pretty important. Some of them seem extremely important for the prophecy. He has a face sprite, which is quite unusual. His name is in the Gonna Maker sequence, so if you like type in you want to call the vessel Jockington, it says something like, oh, very interesting. So something like that. There's only 2 chapters left, so with all of that, like all of that is said, it's like, well, he didn't show up in chapter 5. When is this guy going to show up? Like, when is any of that going to be relevant? And I believe it's because he could be friend guys. This is going to be coming up in chapter 6 probably. a lot of people explain his behavior like once they notice it. They've said that he's a goner. I think I call this a goner of the gaps argument. It's just kind of like, oh, somebody's kind of weird, so they're just a goner. It's like that doesn't really say that much. Like I really don't know what that's even saying in the end. Like I did track that understanding. Like I was like, yeah, okay, well he's weird, so I guess goner. But if there's a better explanation for the behavior, I think we should move on to that rather than just calling him a goner. He's also got Chekhov's sunglasses. He's had these sunglasses on the whole time, and we have no idea what his eye colors are, which is extremely sus, given how important eye colors have been in the game in the past. So here we've got Jockington grows the beard. And what's very strange about this prophecy panel is that it's not the first time we saw it. Like in chapter 4. That's not the first time. We saw it we heard of it when Toby said in 2021, which is far before the 2025 release of chapters 3 and 4. He said in the 6th anniversary Undertale stream, no spoilers, Jockington grows a beard. Spoiler, sorry. So he's saying, like, no spoilers, and then he's like, oh no, that is a spoiler. Which is sort of weird. I don't know why he's drawing attention to that one specifically. I think you can say this is like the normal kind of understanding would just be, okay, well, he had a joke panel and so he could spoil that one ahead of time and it would be kind of funny. It's like, yeah, okay. So that prophecy, yeah, it's, you know, it of course comes up in chapter 4 and then it's fulfilled in chapter 5. Now, strange thing is that snakes really aren't supposed to grow hair. You wouldn't expect that from a snake. They don't do that in real life. You can't really say that they can't do it in a world like Undertale because, of course, you have like Gerson who has hair. When turtles don't grow hair, so it's not like it's impossible, but it is kind of strange. If you were to make like a cat that doesn't grow hair or like some other furry animal, it would kind of be like it would just be a little bit odd. So of course if you were to use something that didn't grow hair, you would have to use an animal who didn't grow hair, usually. And I believe that this prophecy panel is actually not a joke, and it's actually an extremely important major reveal for the game. And we'll be finding out about that soon. And I think that the reason why he can grow this beard is because he was replaced by something that can grow hair, when Jockington ordinarily can't. So, in the church, Jockington's there, he's with the Kattenheimers, and he's got broken speech. It's like completely incoherent, it makes no sense. Some people have said that in the Japanese version, he doesn't have broken speech. He still has some weird speech patterns, so it's definitely still continuing on there as well. With the Kattenheimers, he says, for her, I go to... God, this is going to be hard to, to sound out. For her, I go the big church match as her substitute player. So, what this means... Well, what it seems to mean is that Caddy doesn't like going to the church with her family. She like, can't do it for some reason. And so he's saying that since Caddy can't go to church, well, that's what Jockington does for her. And then he also says, in the picture down here, it says, for me, she covered in hair always. We do what the other can. So it's like the other can't. That comes after the big church match line. Which I think I removed by accident, but anyway. So basically Jockington's saying that he can't grow hair like Caddy can. He can be a substitute for Caddy, which is the thing that Caddy can't do. So he's saying that being covered in hair is something that he can't do, and Caddy can't do the substitution. So there's like a dynamic there, right? Where Jockington is saying that something about hair growing he can't do. That's Caddy's job. So coming in with another translation. These are being done out of order because I'm doing this during editing and I realized something way later down the line. I'm coming back for this one. Not sure if I'm going to do a translation on all of these, but some of the Jockington lines especially, I feel like need some of the Japanese translated, because Jockington says such weird things in English, and looking at the Japanese helps understand what he's actually what he's actually saying, what's meaningful, what's not, etc. Right? I'm not going to go read through all the Japanese. I'm just going to tell you what it means roughly. Keep in mind, you know, I'm not like a super expert at Japanese, but I roughly know what's going on here. So, when he says, sorry, don't know that, never will, been real, I said in the theory that that's weird that he says, like, don't know and never will, okay? That doesn't come up in the Japanese text. He doesn't ever say that he never will. He just says that he doesn't know and that he doesn't care. He's just like, he's very dismissive about it. He's just like, yeah, whatever. For this one, for her, I go to the big church match as her substitute player. This one's interesting because he actually says that he does it without fur. So he says in Caddy's place goes to the church, goes to the church match, but he does it without fur. That's what he says, and so that's like an added part to that line. He does it without fur. Which is kind of strange. It's like animal fur. Okay, so this last part, for me, she covered in hair always. We do what the other can't. Or can't. This is 100%. It's saying the same thing. It's got Caddy as always, and then it's got me who isn't covered in hair. So it's like me who is me who is careless. For their sake, which is for Jockington's sake, Caddy is covered in hair, and she specifically does it for him. It's 100% it is for him, and it's for him in two different ways. It's for his sake, and then this is for if you're like giving something to somebody. So 100% it is for him, and it's not just saying like, you know, it's not abstract or whatever. It is for Jockington that she is covered in hair, even if that sounds kind of weird. And the first thing that he says to you when you talk to him here, which is very strange, he says, Kris, fold you, which is spelled a bit like fooled. It's like it seems like it should be fooled because fold's not a word. Haha, I bet you thought I was Caddy. It's like, why does he think he's what? Like, why would we think that he's Caddy? Like, he doesn't look like Caddy at all. Like, yeah, he's with the Cadenheimer family. There's no reason to think that he's Caddy here. So it's just bizarre. Today's game was wild. I think we won. What? Codes? That's kind of just a whatever line. Sorry, don't know that. Never will. Been real. So why does he say like never will? Like never will know the codes? Why? Like, how can you be so sure that you never will know the codes? I think the reason why he acts like this, with such broken speech and stupid imitation, is that he's just dumb. So like, Friend is dumb, rather. And Friend doesn't know how to properly imitate people. And they're also a trickster who laughs, they like to have fun, and so they're playing these like silly jokes with Kris, while just being stupid. So Jockington ends up going on to grow the beard, which is something that he says that he can't do previously. So it's like a bit of a mess up. And cats have plenty of hair, so they would be able to do it if you were a cat. Now, one organic, which is the or I guess, I don't know, I can't remember if this one's an organic or not, because he's not an organ. Whatever, one of the church people, I can't remember the NPC name. But next to this Jockington grows the beard prophecy, which is pictured on the screen, he says, "Come 5 o'clock, the shadow will grow. which once we get into chapter 5, we find that he does grow the beard, so it seems that that's a reference to chapter 5. So 5 o'clock is chapter 5. And the beard grows. This was said by some people on Reddit or somewhere, I can't remember, but there's this phrase, growing the beard, which is a trope term that is the opposite of jumping the shark. So it's when a series gets good. It refers to when Riker grows a beard in Star Trek. I think it might be between seasons or something, but he grows a beard, and suddenly the show jumps up in quality significantly. And so, what I think this might... There's a chance that this is referring to once Jockington grows the beard, and once we acknowledge what that actually means, then Deltarune is going to have a major shift where it really starts getting into the parts that Toby's excited to show us and that we are excited to see, which is some of the more like darker stuff, some of the mysteries finally unraveling, and part of that is going to be when Friend is revealed to actually be within the town as a force, and that is going to lead into what's in the bunker, the meat factory, all of that. Okay, so there's another section where Jockington grows the beard shows up, so there's 2 panels with that. It's in a different place to the first. And there's an organic here, definitely an organic, who says a bit more about the shadow. So he says, before the clock strikes midnight, the shadow will grow. So the clock striking midnight is kind of strange because if 5 o'clock is chapter 5, well then presumably midnight would be something like chapter 0, or it could be like chapter 12 or whatever, but it seems like it's chapter 0. Which is strange because it's like, why would the beard grow in chapter 0? Like, that doesn't really make much sense, right? It's not referring to Jockington's beard, because Jockington's beard does not grow in chapter 0, otherwise it would be there. And he even says that, like, once the beard is grown, it can't be ungrown or whatever. He says something like that in chapter 5. So, it just doesn't line up. Oh, the shadow will grow serpentine. So the shadow will grow, and it will grow like snake-like, which is strange. Even when the clock ran back, the shadow was growing. So it says the clock ran back, which is like, okay, so midnight is chapter 0. So in chapter 0, the shadow was growing. Beard was growing in chapter 0, and it was growing snake-like. Strange. A patch of shadow slithering on serpentine. A patch of shadow slithering on serpentine. Very, very, very strange. Now, what I think this means is that the shadow is referring to Friend, okay? Because the beard part of Jockington is only possible because of Friend, so it is... Like, the beard is basically Friend. And because of that, the shadow itself, like, that's just referring to Friend, who is turning into a serpentine figure before the game even starts. And what I believe that this is referring to is and/or Jockington and/or the Tail of Hell, which occurs prior to the game starting. Which is, yeah, the Tail of Hell takes scroll. It just says here, shadow guys look exactly like Friend with the white outline and black body. I don't know if that means much of anything, but it's a thing. The Knight is mentioned to utilize shadows, so the Knight that pulls the fountains from the earth. And holy fountains whose shadows are creating a new world. That's something important too, I guess. Shadows are like all amongst darkness and that kind of thing, obviously. And also on the screen is they'll hear the Ring of Heaven's call, which is like maybe the angels in opposition to some sort of demonic force, and that's what the serpent imagery evokes. Keep in mind, all of the images on the screen they're within the same kind of area, which is very interesting because Jockington grows the beard being near. They'll see the Tail of Hell take crawl. It's, you know, it's kind of weird. So he finally grows it in chapter 5. He says, look, Noelle, I'm on track to be both king and queen. Noelle says, oh, Jockington, should have known with how popular you are. And I'm just giving some dialogue here. Then Jockington goes, haha, this event is the trigger. for me to have the confidence to grow facial hair. So he's definitely still not speaking properly here, even though it sounds quite a lot more coherent, because he's got a comma in front of the exclamation mark. He seems to have the capacity to play both king and queen. I don't know if that's just like narcissism or whatever, but he seems to be played pretty straight so far. Sorry, like pretty like a straight masculine kind of role. So, sorry, like he just seems to be played fairly masculine here. So I'm just not really sure what the queen part here is exactly, but who knows. He's very popular. In other words, has a lot of friends. Of course, as I mentioned, Toby mentioned that Jockington's the most popular character in the game world. He randomly just starts talking about like meta game knowledge, which is very strange because characters don't often do that, especially not light world ones. Where he's talking about like this event is the trigger. Like what? Like that is such a big deal. It's like I guess, you know, Sans does kind of speak in sort of similar terms, but it's just really, really odd for someone to be doing that. He shouldn't know that. So in my opinion, this is because Friend is dumb, but they do have knowledge of this from Garza and from ERAM about how the game works. And so he's been told about that, and then he's the continual leaker of the bunker group chat, and so he's just leaking crap. He laughs about it as he says it, which is what Friend does as a stupid trickster. And yes, as I mentioned before, the shadow grows in Chapter 5, so we know that. And yeah, as for like why he can't shave it after he grows it, because he says, I need to shave, but my beard was grown. It cannot be undone. I don't know why he can't shave it, so... I don't know if it's like supposed to be like, well, if it's a cat, you can't really shave the cat, but yeah, I don't get it. Somebody might have a better explanation for that. And so, it seems like the prophecy is flexible from looking at this, because if a fake Jockington can grow the beard, then the names of the prophecy mentions, they could be quite flexible. Or break away from our usual understanding of what the names actually refer to. Though the original Jockington could never grow a beard, so I'm not really certain about that. Because it would seem that this was the only Jockington who ever could, like the one who was made of Friend, which would then mean that Friend Jockington is just inevitable. I'm sure like theorists were already thinking this kind of thing, because it was always like, well, is Susie really the girl? Like, is it Noelle? You know, who are these different roles? Is the cage with parts? Is that Kris? Is that a vessel? Where does Asriel come into it? Like, is he the Prince of the Darkness instead of Ralsei? There's all these kinds of questions which people were already thinking, and I think this is just one more onto the pile in that Jockington doesn't even need to be Jockington. But what's important about this is that if this is a minion of Garsta, and Garsta wants to say change the prophecy or something, it would make complete sense for him to start swapping people out. And I think that this is going to be part of the motivation here, is if the prophecy is flexible and somebody wants to change something about it, they're going to have to start swapping people out. And how do you swap people out? Well, the best way, of course, would be to kill them, because otherwise the prophecy is going to insert them into the story. So you kill them, replace them, and have them be somebody else who you have more influence over. Yeah, so that could mean the girl, the prince, yeah. Oh yeah, the other thing is that swapping doesn't have to happen right away, so Garsta could have Kris complete their role, like stay as their role for quite a long time, but when Kris is destined to do something to screw up a plan, or to kill somebody, or to do whatever, Garsta can swap them out with the vessel at that specific point, and then potentially be able to change the prophecy if that's what he's trying to do. Jockington at the diner. He says, Caddy's my friend, and I support my friends through thick and thin. I just want to say, he's mentioned friend twice there. Okay, this is like the same like quotes or whatever. He's talking about friends. He supports his friends, which is a plural friends, which we know from Pink. There's more than one. Through thick and thin, long and short, cold and hot. Whatever shape the world takes, I'll be there. So he's rattling off a whole bunch of different appearances. Because if he just said, I support my friends through thick and thin, that's a pretty normal line, okay? That's not talking about thick and thin friends, it's talking about, like, situations. But he keeps going with long and short, cold and hot, whatever, and then he says, whatever shape. So he's straight up just saying, like, shape. Like, whatever shape-shifting, shapes that my friends take, I'll be there, I'll be supporting them. Which, like, that line, like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, unless it's something like that. It feels like the line makes complete sense if you think of him as a shape-shifting cat, and it makes very little sense outside of that. And then, right after that, he just says, life is a big ball game, and when the man is on the field, he does a big dunk. Try to be that dunk. So, lots of people have pointed out that that's referring to the Titan ball dunk in Chapter 4, and keep in mind he was talking about this in Chapter 2. So he has had this foreknowledge for a long, long time about, you know, what to do about a Titan. But of course, since he's friend and he's stupid, he just leaks another thing that he shouldn't be saying. Yeah, he's sitting with Caddy while he says this as well, which seems a little bit strange because he's friends with both Caddy and Caddy, like with an I and with a Y. Seems very associated with like being friends with cats. More than any other character in the game. I don't think anybody else is set up to be friends with both of them, and be set up around all the Cattenheimers as well. Yeah, and Caddy also here. These are all pictures on the screen as well. She says that his intelligence is low, so she explicitly says that Jockington is not smart, essentially, which is what Pink says about what friends are. Now, here's where it gets kind of crazy, okay? Because I've been yapping about a bunch of stuff that I've picked up on, but a lot of it is interpretation, on my part. But this is where it gets kind of weird, because Toby, focuses on this. So it's not just the stream, the Undertale stream, where he points it out and he reveals it, like, way ahead of time. So he can eventually laugh at us and be like, guys, this has been revealed since, like, since literally before Chapter 2, because that stream was when Chapter 2 was released right after it. But anyway, he's got Happy New... I'm going to read out the tweets that he's got here. He's got a little picture of Jockington. And it says... Oh, this is on Blue Sky, but anyway. It says, Happy New Year, friends. Don't forget, Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 will release this year in 2025. And then it's got next to Jockington, under the speech bubble, his new catchphrase. And then another post on Blue Sky right under that. Happy New Year, friends. Deltarune Chapter 4, now being bug tested by a professional team on PC. And then, next to Jockington under the speech bubble, his Non't catchphrase. Very, very odd to do this. Why on earth is Jockington the one telling us this? It's just bizarre. Yeah, really just makes no sense. It's got the weird Non't phrasing, which is quite similar to the can't phrasing in the church that Jockington makes. And he mentions friends twice in these. He keeps talking about friends. Why is Jockington talking about friends? Yeah, he says don't forget as well. I don't know what's up with that, but I don't really get these posts in general. It's just very, very odd. It's like, it's either just total, like, schizophrenic theory baiting or something, or there's something going on here. So he's being intentional. This one is like, it's like the theory nuke with this. like a nuke in a good way. So Temmie in 2018, the tweet's on the screen here, says on Twitter, "A cat's tail is just a snake in disguise." Just completely bizarre that she comes out and says this. This presumably would have been when Deltarune Chapter 1 was being developed, but it wasn't out yet. Yeah, so Deltarune Chapter 1 would release in October 31st, 2018, and that was April 5th, 2018 is when Temmie said that. It lines up with a lot of other evidence where if you treat this theory seriously, Friend's role has been thought of a long time prior to Friend coming into being into the story in chapter 6, as I think he'll come more into it. There's just no other reasonable explanation for Temmie saying this. It's just like weird. She doesn't elaborate on it. It's like she doesn't like reply or something and be like, guys, this is just like a like I was just looking at I was looking at my cat and I looked at the tail and I was like, oh, it's kind of snakish. It's kind of weird. It doesn't say anything like that. There's tons and tons of speculation underneath the post. Like the replies are just filled with people they're Friend posting. They're just with pictures of Friend and stuff and being like, what the hell is this? It's clear what the interpretation of this tweet is, and yeah, I'm not saying that Temmie needs to clarify or something. Like, definitely not saying that. I'm just saying that hasn't happened. There's on the Bakken Echo Wikipedia page, it's got in the Edo period, which is from 1603 to 1867, there was a folk belief that cats with long tails, like snakes, could bewitch people. And that page has remained very similar for over a decade. So that line and so many other sections on that page would have remained unaltered, so Toby would have read them if he was, looking into what a Bakken Echo is. And strangely, in an even earlier edit, because I kept going back through the history to see when it would change, like, because the page looks pretty much the same for many years. Back in an earlier edit, which is like pre-2011 or some of 2011, which is when Toby had his dream. It mentions how there's a Bakken Echo tale where a cat kills a snake. But since then, that's been removed, and it lacked a citation, so I assume it just got removed for that. But it is quite interesting that somewhere out there, seemingly, there's some tale, some notion that a cat kills a snake. You've also got here on the side of the screen an image of Jockington, who looks similar to the tail of the microphone cat mic. It's not the mic. I mean the cat mic. So that's like the tail of a cat. And then of course you've got the tail of Hell Takes Crawl, which people believe to be Friend's tail. So yeah. And remember, this prophecy panel is in the same room as one of the Jockington Grows a Beard panels. Jockington at school in chapter 1. We've got so a lot of Jockington Goner theory believers say that he was Gonered post chapter 1 because his speech in chapter 1 is relatively normal, but I actually don't think that's the case. I think that he's been cooked from the start. He was already like this in chapter 1, and that's because I think that he was eaten prior to the start of the game. So we've got here his dialogue in chapter 1. Kris, Jockington and Caddy are always partners. We're the ultimate academic duo ever since our first gym class. It was hula hoop day, and they ran out of hoops for us, so she used me instead. That's our origin story. We seem different, but me and Caddy have a ton in common. We both like breathing and unhinging our jaws. Kris, if I had arms, I would take off this cool hat in remembrance of you. I accidentally dropped the hat there. But yeah, he says a cool hat there. So what's interesting about this is that he says that while Caddy and him seem different, they're actually very similar, and I would say that that's because they're both cats. I'm not sure if they're both Friend. I feel like Caddy's not quite there, but they're both cats. And that's what he's talking about. Now he says if he had arms, which is very suspicious, because if he can shapeshift, that would mean that he could gain arms. And then he says he would take his cool hat off in remembrance of you. Like, there's only something that people do at memorial services or funerals. You know, people take off their hats at national anthems and stuff like that as well, but we're talking about remembrance here. We're talking about things in the past, like tragic things, like somebody dying. So, I think this is likely going to be foreshadowing for what's going to happen. Like, when Friend is finally revealed, they will shapeshift some arms. I don't know if that could refer to the Knight, who will also take off their helmet, which is taking off their cool hat, at the same time. Since Friend is seemingly getting more and more like bloodlust to kill Kris. It seems like a confrontation is coming soon. And so it would make sense that the Jockington, if they were the Knight, they would finally reveal who they are by revealing that they are Friend when Kris is going to die, or when Kris is going to meet some horrible fate. Now, I did look at this scene because it's in chapter 1, so Toby has actually like commentated over it, and at 46:40 in the Deltarune stream, it says something strange, and I want you to leave a comment if you see this, and you got to go watch the video. I guess I've got a link there. I'll try to put it in the description.
That added to the funeral
Caddy was
halfway
actually
through.
going to take off Jockington's hat, but I didn't do it. Too hard.
It's a lot of work.
To
Yep.
friends of animation.
Now we don't know what his hair looks like under there.
Difficult.
Now,
You watch that, and it says he says something weird, and I seriously I couldn't catch what he said. He says something like, Caddy was actually going to take off Jockington's hat, which, yeah, I did a stupid find and replace. Okay. Caddy was actually going to take off Jockington's hat, but didn't do it. Oh, sorry. Caddy was actually going to take off Jockington's hat, but I didn't do it. Too hard. And then there's like a jumbly bit of speech, and then I think he says animation, difficult. It sounds like he says, too hard, two friends of animation, difficult. But to me, that makes no sense, and so it sounded more to me like, too hard, expensive animation, difficult. But he might have said 2 frames of animation. I have no idea what he said there. It kind of freaked me out because it kind of does sound like 2 friends of animation, and I'm like, what? Huh? What? Why did you just say friends? What? You gotta keep in mind all of these the streams that they do there. They're all like scripted, like they're pre-recorded. Or at least they're rehearsed or whatever. I can't remember what it exactly is, but like there's a lot of thought put into those streams, so anything can happen, especially with Toby's text-to-speech voice, which means that he doesn't have to like speak like completely live with it. Like he can prepare some stuff, including the sounds of the text-to-speech, like what it says. So anyway, yeah, Toby mentions, along with some of the other Fangamer guys, that the whole room is like a funeral for Kris for some reason, it's just bizarre. Like what the hell? I don't even think the other characters say too much that is like too much of a funeral. I might be wrong about that though. Now when he says here, we both like breathing and unhinging our jaws, that's really crazy because when you first see the Knight in chapter 3, they are breathing extremely heavily. And this has been used as evidence for Rudy Knight because Rudy, you know, has a condition obviously, and he's coughing all the time, like he's dying, and so it would make sense that if he was in this form, he would also be breathing very heavily. But Jockington just outright says, like, we both like breathing. Like, huh? Like, okay, doesn't like everybody, I guess, kind of like breathing? Like nobody really says that. It's just bizarre. And then unhinging our jaws, I can't think of anybody who unhinges their jaw to the degree that the knight does when they start roaring. And there's a picture on the screen there to point that out. So, yeah, I think it's kind of makes sense. And also, just a random thing, but to bite something hard, you need to open your mouth wide first. So, you might be referring to that. Cats can open their mouths pretty wide, so can snakes. So, but that's like you could be saying that normally, but it's just weird. Okay. Now, back to chapter 4. We're going a little bit out of order, but it just makes sense because it's kind of related. So Jockington says here, I believe this is after church, he goes, "Kris, I see you always with Susie. Maybe Susie is like a caddy to you too. You two share one lizard's brain. I like. Which one of you can unhinge your jaw?" So he's talking about combining and like sharing one brain, which is like weird. Like I don't know who says that. You to share one cat brain. If you replace Susie with Caddy, like as the subject of that sentence, that would be what it says. You to share one cat brain. Also mentions unhinging jaws again, like the previous slide mentioned. Yeah, and then there's more to what he says. So he says, "Kris, we were never close, but now we are far. To be Susie's friend is to be the world's enemy." So he's mentioning friend again. Which is sick. I respect your game, Kris. But if you hurt Caddy or Caddy's feelings, you will be up a ball without a court. Ball is a very important word. We're gonna just lock that one in your mind. Don't tell Caddy, but I will neutralize her hex with my sports blessing as a mercy. Run, Kris, while you still have legs. So that's really strange. He says that, like, he's mentioned, like, if he had arms, if, like, taking off out or whatever, but he's saying if Kris had legs. Like, is he gonna chop Kris in half or something? Like, what does he mean by that? If Kris, well, Kris still has legs, when's Kris gonna lose their legs? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. Unless you think that he has foreknowledge of, like, meat factory stuff or whatever. And when Kris is, say, in the weird route or wherever, when they're going to get pulled into the depths or into the meat factory, well, then they'll get chopped up for parts and then made into a vessel. And that's what the Gonamaker sequence is. And Jockington, for some reason, seems to have some knowledge of this. Oh, and yeah, Jockington hanging around cats again. He's the Cattenheimer's in the tree, and then Caddy's there. So we've got the cat petters / rare cats game that Noelle talks about on her blog, and then has the game for. So they all stand on two legs and dance, like Buck and Echo already went through that. But they also have different appearances, like different colors for their rarity. So on the screen, you might want to look at that. It's got the green cat is the basic one, but you've got a green cat with aura, which is blue. So you've got, Jockington colors. It's green and blue. And the reason why the green and blue aren't quite the same is because the colors are at max saturation on the cats. It's just like it feels like it just is for that video game. They're just, they want to be brighter for that. Yeah, the other rarities, to me, they seem to be Deaths with the rock and roll cat, and then there's Noelle possibly with the angel cat. That's all I can think of. I don't know what that might refer to, whether it's going to be like a past or a future victim of Friend, or like Friend's going to be going after those characters. I have no idea, but as I've mentioned before, I believe that the primary targets for Friend will be people who are mentioned in the prophecy or have some importance within all of that. And if that's true, well, you've got Jockington who grows the beard in the prophecy. You've got Des, who is possibly the original girl, and then you've got the angel, which is potentially Noelle. Or just, the Noelle part doesn't even matter. The angel's mentioned in the prophecy, so they would be going after the angel, right? Additionally, Caddy and Caddy own, Caddy with an I and Caddy with a Y, own the Cat Petters RPG game. It's got their name written on it. which is the one they lent to Asriel, and presumably that's where the mantle minigame comes from. There's no other like source for that is mentioned in the game, but there is a game there at Asriel's computer or whatever. Okay, so at the end of chapter 1, Jockington starts talking about balls. So we're gonna get into the balls part of the theory. You've got, and Jockington just has an association with balls. He likes sports, but he mentions balls a lot. So you've got Caddy's working, so I started. God, it's so hard to read this. Caddy's working, so I'm starting on our project. I've already copied a bunch of pictures. It's the same picture of a soccer ball 73 times. You could say I'm having a ball. So, with balls, the significance of them, the Knight has a ball form that they use when they're moving around, and the Fun Gang also use that because it's like a quick animation tool to make it quicker, to draw and stuff. But the Knight like lingers in their ball form. It's definitely more of it's like a real thing. It's not just for the quick animations. There is an odd connection between soccer balls and baseballs, and with things that are easier to draw, which is mentioned at some other part, I can't remember where. It's a giant baseball for parties. Actually seems the giant baseball is a soccer ball that's been painted all over. It would be easier to draw that way. Parties are a group of friends there, and the Knight's ball resembles a giant baseball as well. And as we all know, copies are monochrome, as is the Knight, so it's like, you know, the copies of a soccer ball, which would also be monochrome. And normal NPC mentions a discount code when you try to buy a takoyaki, and it's just ball, with spaces and all capitalized. More balls. Okay, so the Tail of Hell is made out of balls for no discernible reason. I don't think anybody's gotten to the bottom of that. And here is a crazy thing, like super crazy, is the ball chime. And if you didn't know about this, there's a song called Mystery.mp3 within Undertale. If you type in the letters BALL, when the Undertale logo pops up, you get this song. Okay, so it's just bizarre why that's even in the game. I don't know enough leitmotif analysis music stuff, so I can't even begin to analyze that song. I can't tell you can't tell you if it's got like Penumbra Phantasm in it or something. I have no clue, but I don't think it's got Penumbra Phantasm in it though. I didn't hear that, but it's a big deal. That song's been in the game for been in Undertale, I believe, since the start. So balls are important. Alright, so we're finally finishing up with Jockington. The Jockington Conspiracy video by Dragonade. It covers a lot of the stuff that's in here, so shout out to him. I pretty much took a lot of the concepts that were covered in his video covering Jockington, which I believe he thought he was more of a goner, but I disagree with that. I think that he's more likely to be friend. I think I agree that Caddy's probably not, but I don't know what's going on with Caddy. I think she's got connections with this, strongly. But parts are just not making sense to me. Because her speech patterns are still quite normal. I don't know if there's a different friend who isn't so stupid or what, but she seems quite normal, and but I don't understand why, even without any theorizing or whatever, why is she hanging out with Jockington and not thinking that he's totally stupid or there's something wrong with him? With the way that he talks and acts, it is pretty bizarre. I mean, I know, you know, you don't have to get rid of a friend just because they're dumb, but it just seems strange to me that how Jockington acts. He doesn't act dumb. He acts like his brain is completely broken. He shouldn't even be capable of of half of the stuff he does. It's just weird. You'd think that she would notice that something's wrong with him, but who knows? Maybe he's just always been like that, and Caddy's cool with that. I don't know. But devil imagery is very often associated with serpents, and friend has been associated with the demon Kris summoned with Caddy, especially the Tail of Hell part. Caddy's been involved with all that demon stuff as well, so... But I don't know what to make of that. Another interesting part of this is like the fact of what are prey to cats? Like what can cats kill? And you might think that, like, you know, cats go after mice, cats go after birds and stuff like that, which is true. But cats are originally native to like a more desert areas. Like there's tons of cats in deserts, and so they have to contend with snakes. Okay. And if you actually look up videos of this, you can find that, and I knew this before I even was doing this theory, but cats can fight snakes like extremely well, because for whatever reason, cats have extremely high reflexes. That they react to things very, very quickly, and quicker than snakes, even though snakes are pretty quick to react as well. But it means that in these micro movements, cats can manage to claw at and deflect any kind of bite that a snake does. Which is, it's pretty impressive, but what it means is that you might think that snakes are an extremely scary creature and that cats are like these cute little kittens, okay? But like an adult cat versus an adult snake, the cat will win in general, because it's got that advantage. So considering that, Jockington would be prey. There's another thing here, just the final part, which is the image on the screen. It's got the hurt sprite, which is like an inverted color palette of friend. If you hit a friend, it turns briefly white with blue eye and a green eye, which is the same colors as Jockington. So that's interesting as well. Okay, now on to normal NPC Candidate 2, also known as the Onion Sun Butcher, who is extremely normal, of course. There is nothing wrong with this guy. So this part's pretty speculative, and it's not necessary at all for the broader points of the video, because I think that normal NPC could be a shapeshifter. I think it totally works if he's not. So the community currently believes that he's a goner, and that he's also a parrot, because you've got like the pirate and Gaster stuff. You know, that's like a meme, but like people think he's a parrot. Like that's sort of the connection there. Because Gaster would have like a parrot on his shoulder or something like that. But I don't like he is a goner, because in Undertale you see him as a goner, so that is like his fate. So we seem to know that if there's a connection there, it seems to be that's where he's going. I think it fits better, like I was saying with Jockington toward the end there, that he's actually prey to a cat because he's a bird. Seems to make sense that if Friend were to look for prey, he would go for the easier victims rather than the harder ones. And I believe that when people say that he parrots his victims, like the library person and an Onion San especially, with the don't wait stuff, I think it could be because Friend is just mimicking the very little that they know about normal NPC and the very little they know about Onion San, which isn't very much because they don't spend much time around them before killing them. And so their dialogue doesn't quite make sense if it's just mimicking the victim's speech, because they screw it up like a lot. They don't really keep just saying the same thing. It's not like a recording, like they mess it up. So as we see here, this is the first time we see a normal NPC, and they say, "I love reading books, especially the books upstairs. You should really read them." And already we see that the speech is broken up. It doesn't really make much sense. It's quite a lot like Jockington, where he's not speaking full sentences, he just drops random grammar and continues. Then when you talk again, it says, "I love reading books, especially the books." So he omits the upstairs part. So he screws it up, and he's not continuing to mimic. Weirdly, Jockington's there as well, where he talks about balls and stuff. Which is interesting, because Jockington's talking about balls there when normal NPC will later talk about how their coupon code is ball for the takoyaki balls. Next, He says, I love reading books, especially the books upstairs. I love reading, especially books. I love reading, especially... Wait. The books upstairs. The books upstairs. Wait. The books are... Wait, love. So it's even more messed up in their dialogue. They fail to mimic because they're dumb and they don't know how to act human. If they were how the community sees it currently, they mimic Onion-san's last words, then it'd mean they're also mimicking some other victim here who loved reading. And I think that makes sense. Whether or not they're a friend or not, they would still be doing this. So where is the evidence of someone being killed here though? That's the issue. If somebody were killed here, who isn't normal NPC, well then where's the body? Where's the missing person? Where is any sign whatsoever that somebody was here and now they're not here? Nobody's said anything about this. Now, this, technically you could say that like with Undyne, that nobody seems to care either. But I think it is suspicious that nobody is seeing this. And like I don't know what to make with Undyne, but Undyne might just be one of those cases where maybe Undyne just does this kind of thing. Like maybe she just goes on drives or something. And nobody really knows what's going on with her, but nobody questions her because she's the police chief. Maybe she just goes on these random trips. You don't really know. But we've got another person here where it's like, okay, well, let's say that they did die. Let's say this book lover did die. Surely this book lover, like, you know, they go to the library, they kind of seclude themselves maybe, but they still show up to the library and nobody's really noticing, it seems. And if you were to try to think, like from a story perspective, because we should be able to identify who's gone missing, like somebody should be mentioned, we can't really tell who's died here. And because of that, it seems to make sense to me that, or at least it would be far less suspicious, if, like the tale, one of the Bakeneko tales that I said at the start, where the mother is killed and then the cat like inhabits the mother's body, in order to not like draw alarm, to not be suspected. Well then, the same thing has happened here. So normal NPC, so friend kills normal NPC, and then shapeshifts into them, probably just like eating them or potentially taking them to the meat factory, and then producing whatever is needed, whatever magic happens with Gaster, I don't know, in order to create a body that they can then go back to the library and sort of just sit around for a little bit and act like they're just the same, you know? So if the victim is found at the library, well then friend thinks, oh, okay, well this person should be at the library. And perhaps it's normal for them to, you know, sit around at the library for like 2 days in a row or something, but that's what friend thinks about them, and that's all that really matters. And yeah, that's why they seem really suspicious and weird. Like they say, especially the books upstairs when they're already upstairs. It's bizarre. So then on to chapter 4, they go, don't wait, especially the don't. Wait, don't. And so this is quite interesting, because if you were to think of this as like, you know, wait, don't, like Onion-san saying this, as most people think, the especially just doesn't make much sense here. I don't know why, like Onion-san would be saying especially don't, or especially wait, like that makes no sense. But we see them say this with the last victim. The last victim says especially. And so what I think is that they've mixed up their victims, and because friend potentially takes in like multiple at a time, and then they get confused about who they're actually supposed to pretend to be, then this happens pretty much. Like if what I'm saying here, they're currently shapeshifted as their first victim, as the bird person, right? As normal NPC, who they have killed and they are attempting to mimic and to seem like. However, as part of their power, the power is like is killing and then mimicking people. So with Onion-san, potentially they have already killed him or eaten him. Some part of that process has been imbued into them, and so they are mimicking Onion-san while embodying their previous victim. And so there's like this mix-up in their brain where they don't know who to actually pretend to be, because their most recent kill is Onion-san, but their body is different. And so you get this like little mix-up thing, like with with Pink and with the Mad Mew Mew, like with the body, where there is this like both things are going on at the same time, and there's no ability to kind of to be just one. But you know, a lot of that speculation. But, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to check out these lines because I thought they were quite interesting. So you've got don't wait, especially the don't, wait, don't. What's interesting about these is that you have the matemo, which is even if you wait, and then muda, which is pointless, meaningless, like it's just like it's a waste. So even if so it's basically even if you wait, there's no point. Even if you wait, there's no point. So waiting is pointless, Tokini is especially, and then muda is pointless again. So especially, it's like especially pointless. And then this part is quite interesting because what this is trying to get at with the dots here is that it's like even if you wait, it's pointless. Even if you wait, it's pointless or it's meaningless. So it's like a murderer basically saying to Onion-san, with Onion-san being like, wait, please, just wait. And then the normal NPC here, presumably, is saying, even if we wait, it's pointless. So it's, you know, it's over. There's nobody who's coming, basically. There's nobody who's coming. Which I think that was an interesting way to do it, because it's a little bit different to what we got in English, where it kind of gives the vibe of but nobody came in the genocide route, right? Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and I'd throw it in here, even though it's pretty much the same meaning. So this is the part that's quite interesting to me. Like I was, when I thought of this, I was like, oh my god. Okay, so a big question is with this takoyaki stand, where you think like, okay, like even in the normal understanding that this guy's killed Onion-san, like why is he selling it in public? Like what the hell is this? He's like, what? He's shoving it in our face? Like why? Did Gaster tell him to do this? Just why is this even happening? It just doesn't make sense. Like if this is all some coordinated plan. This is like one of the most stupid things ever. And honestly, if Toby does do something like that, like it's just, it will be dumb. It will just be dumb writing, because you just gotta think to yourself like, why is this happening? If there's any kind of intelligence going on here, this stall would have never been made. But it starts to make more sense if you think of it from a friend perspective. Because it's like, if they're not very smart, and they're not very, able to plan properly, and they disobey their masters, and they think that this is genuinely a good idea because it helps them fit in the festival and not look weird, it totally makes sense that they would do something like this. But that's not the most important part here, okay? So friend loves protein, right? Then why sell it? Like if they love protein, why would you want to sell it? Why? And the big issue here is that it's not for profit because they sell it for free. They originally say that it's, you know, 2G or whatever. But then they just go, nah, just have it for free, whatever. They mess up in what they're saying. And then they just say have it for free. Which, if they liked protein that much, why would they ever give this out for free? So it's not a profit motive that they're going after. And so Noelle is concerned that it's octopus, right? Which is something that Toby specifically wanted to write in. And Susie's like, no, don't worry, because it just tastes like raw onion. And that's kind of weird, okay? Because, well, some people are like, okay, well, maybe it's monster dust, and then it's like onion powder or something. Because people are still questioning how monsters die in Deltarune compared to Undertale. But no matter what, it tastes like onions. And here's the crazy part. if you don't know cats that well, cats hate onions. And they're extremely toxic to them. You can't feed them to them because it destroys their blood cells. And they hate even the smell of onions. But you've got to be careful if they're like cooked ones, because you know, cats can still eat those, especially if they're with other meat and stuff like that. So yeah, like, cats hate onions, okay? And this is kind of crazy because you think to yourself, like, why did Onion-san, why is he an onion? Like, there's not really any like puns between onions and octopus from what I understand. And Toby has a tweet there from 2016 which says, "Why is Onion-san even here? Why did I make this character?" People have pointed out this tweet, but they don't really, I don't think they fully grasp how important that is, because it's like, yeah, why is Onion-san like a character? Why is he an onion? And I think that the connection between onions and cats is a pretty big one. And it makes complete sense then why a friend would be not interested in protein at all, which is onions. There would be no reason to eat it. They don't like it. They're not going to eat it. So instead they sell it. And even if this wasn't actually friend and it was just normal NPC working with friend and the others, well, you know, friend wouldn't want to take the meat. Like, they want nothing to do with it. So they're just like, okay, well, you deal with it. And that's why it would be like sold or whatever. The other part of this, which I don't really understand, is that cats are supposed to hate water, which is like a bit of a problem for my theory, I think, but it wouldn't be too much of an issue if it was just, yeah, like for this part, normal NPC is in on it too. He does the killing, or you know, something else does the killing. Like, I don't know, but I just thought I'd mention it because I don't understand the water thing. But the cats being afraid of water thing, like, it does, or being weak to water, that does come up later as well. So keep it in mind if you've got an idea for it. So this is addressing why, like, a lot of people will say with goners that it's almost like a character gets cancer or like some sort of viral disease or something where it progresses, and then progressively they just get worse and worse. But that's just not how goners seem to be made exactly, because we have the Goner Maker sequence where you have a bunch of images which are called like image Goner body and image Goner head and all that kind of thing when you're making the vessel. And literally the only thing that we know about how Goners are created is that it's that sequence. That's what we've got to go off of, which is that they are combined parts. And so to say that a Goner is made from just like standing around and then like degenerating, that's not what is shown. There is like a possibility, I believe some people have floated this with Kris, that like Kris is actually a vessel and that without the soul they start like turning grey. But I don't know about that. So I mean, there technically is a possibility there that these guys are like imbued somehow to stay colourful and then they will turn grey as they degenerate, but we haven't seen any turning grey yet, so yeah. I believe that Gon is what is made after the meat has been processed within the meat factory. So the parts are all stripped down. They are cut like a computer program would cut a file, and then they can be pasted all back together, and effectively they're copied. Which of course kills the original in the process. And I think that Gus is doing this so that he can replace parts of the prophecy with other things, and you know, change parts of the story. That's his hope anyway. If it's not normal NPC, and we're going to get into this later, so maybe it's not the best time to talk about this, but if the Knight's amalgam bird form, yeah, that's a lot, we'll get into it later. But if it doesn't come from normal NPC, it has to come from some other bird, so let's just keep that in mind. Is that there's Snowy's mother, who is a amalgamate in Undertale, and she's currently dead in the graveyard. We don't know when she died. There's also Birdly. And now we get to a little interlude about the amalgamates in the victim, and they're the victims of the Tree Lab. So you've got the cat alleyway in chapter 1 with Alphys. Here we've got a bowl of milk that is on the ground in the alleyway. And Alfie says that it's for her kitty, so she's got... Oh, this saucer of milk? It's for my kitty, Mew Mew. She's a perfect angel. What does she look like? Well, I've never actually seen her, but ever since I started putting out milk, it's been disappearing. So I'd like to think that there's a cat. My cat. So there's a link here between cats and the light world, and something that is never actually seen but seems to have some influence. This is very, very similar, which we will get to Mike, when they start talking about some entity where Tanner will he'll like ask for Mike to do something, and Mike will do something, but nobody knows who Mike is. Like, they have no clue. And sometimes normal people do it, sometimes it just happens, and nobody has any idea. So there's a connection between Mew Mew and Alphys, because she's the original owner of the pink figure, and she gives it to Asgore. So she's got yet another connection with the pink and yellow cat. Alfie seems to like cats quite a bit, but has somehow just never seen this cat, like, ever. Like, surely she would see it at some point if she's constantly putting this milk out. It is shown that there is, like, a rational explanation for why this milk is disappearing, and it's got with Susie and Caddy. When you talk to Caddy, it's got, oh my god, Chrissy, do you, like, want some of my free milk? And Susie says, that's my free milk, you furry freak. Well, she thinks that, I guess. Yeah, so it seems that Susie, you know, maybe frequently has this milk, and potentially Caddy does as well, and maybe there's others, but it seems a bit odd. And this doesn't really say much, because it's the same with Mike, where there are normal figures who can claim responsibility for some of Mike's actions, but some of them go unaccounted for, and that's important. And the other thing is that milk is quite high in protein. It's a really good source of protein, and it's used to make whey protein powder, and cats just have an association with that, obviously. Constantly got cats drinking milk. The other part about this alleyway is that it's got Alphys, and it's also got Everyman, and Everyman is an attack of the Amalgamates. Got pictures of that there, with the graffiti on the wall. There's also IC there. We'll get to him very briefly, but I don't know what to make of him, really. Alphys is just clearly connected with the True Lab, and then by extension with Gaster, because Gaster is in, like, entry 17, whereas Alphys is in, I think all the others? I can't remember, but she's in a bunch of the others. And so the graffiti of the Everyman on the wall, it's just very important. Everyman is, like, well, he's everywhere. He just randomly shows up in all sorts of weird places, which is quite strange. This is just a random thing, but Toby mentioned on the 10th anniversary stream, he said, Everyman is just a good guy that shows up on occasion being good. Adding that pretty much everybody can get along with this guy, and he has a lot to share. I don't know what to make of that, I just thought I'd add that there, because I hadn't heard that before. So, Alphys amalgamates friend cats. So, this is the part of the namesake of the theory, kinda. So Brady is calling Caddy a copycat here. She says, "Oh, that chick next door drives me nuts. I keep seeing her everywhere I go. She's a total copycat. Like, why though? Doesn't she realize she'll never be me?" So she's calling her a copycat. She's bringing attention to that Caddy will never be her. Which is, you know, like, okay. Interesting within this theory, because of the shapeshifting that Brenda's supposed to be doing. And then, in the reverse, Caddy calls Brady a copycat in chapter 1. So she says, "Oh my god, Chrissy," she's like, "my life villain. Like, the other day, I went to see Cat Petters too, and the only other person in the theater was her. Then I went to QC's and ordered a Cat Pacino, and she, like, was already drinking one. She's such a copycat. Copygator?" So here, Caddy's connecting Caddy to Cat Petters, which is important because it contains friend in the Noel site version, and also on the if the mantle minigame is considered to be the Cat Petter's RPG thing. So that's like 2 places where friend comes from, and Catty's talking about it. And that Brady also went to that theater, which is interesting. They also mentioned QC there, I've just noticed as well, which QC is another person who's on the list of characters who, if you type in their name in the Guana Maker, Gusta makes a comment. So this all establishes that Toby he's very much aware of the word copycat, which I mentioned at the start, like has the Japanese word for it as well. So he knows of the concept, and he's mentioning it. He's mentioning it multiple times now. So this also adds the concept to our mind, so that we're aware of it. Okay, coming here post-recording, because I actually noticed something that is quite interesting to me. I was looking over in editing, I was looking over Brady and Catty's dialogue, and I realized that I can just go and check the Japanese text for what translation that Toby used. Which I should probably do with other things as well, if I'm ever making reference to some sort of wordplay, and see if it's the same. But, yeah, because I do know a little bit of Japanese. You know, I'm not fluent by any means, but like I know how to read, you know, hiragana and katakana and stuff pretty easily. So we've got here. She's such a copycat, copygator. And I wanted to look up copycat because I said earlier in the theory, which I didn't even notice, I haven't looked this up yet. I said earlier in the theory that there's the phrase maneko, and that's like it's like a pun, because there's the verb, which is maneshi, which is to copy or it's to imitate rather, maneshi. And you have here, you've got manesunatsu no. And this is basically saying, you know, you like imitate her. It's not quite the maneko that we're looking for though. And so, and then when I saw this, it's got sarukayo, which is calling her a monkey. Which is, you know, you might think like, what the hell, like, why is she calling her a monkey? This is like a monkey see, monkey do type of thing, where monkeys tend to imitate people. And that's just the common way that you tend to say this in Japanese. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, you know, are they just gonna do monkey stuff, right? They're just gonna sort of throw it away, even though they do have this mane here. This is what we're looking for, the mane, which is the base form of the verb. But we'll keep going. So we've got here manashitten janeyo, and again we've got the mane there, which is saying that she's an imitator. She's saying like, stop imitating me. Now the final one, this one is quite interesting, because what do we get here? We get maneko. And that's the neko that we're looking for, because cat is neko. Oh my god, you guys. So I've just noticed here, as I was looking through, because I was looking through, I was doing a final edit, and just watching through my video, and I saw that there was, I was saying that neko was the same as neko, which isn't the same. Neko is cat, neko is different. There's a slight difference there in Japanese. Now, what I wanted to know, right, is if neko is just cat, what does neko mean? Does that mean anything on its own? And oh my god. I did not think that this theory was going to uncover like this much. I had no idea about this until just doing this right now. I'm genuinely bewildered. I don't know. Maybe I did just solve everything. Maybe solve Deltarune. The thing is, okay, with these kanji, Deltarune doesn't use kanji in its text. It's like a lot of games are in Japan, especially for children and on older systems. Because they couldn't fit all of the kanji on them, they just didn't. And so they just used hiragana and katakana. I'm not going to explain what that means if you don't understand Japanese, but the kanji are the more complicated Chinese characters. And so it's left ambiguous what specific kanji it's actually using. But okay, so if we just type this in, this is what we get. And this is like the autocomplete for Japanese. And you've got your first one. Roots. Friend is literally in digital roots. That's the first time we ever saw him. Or them. And this is the kanji that's used for imitation for the maneko. So it is a different... Oh god. It is a different kanji because yeah, that apparently says it's similar. I want to see what happens if you do roots. Yeah, it's just roots here. It's not giving me others. A root. Yeah, okay, root, you get the now. I don't understand what the core part is. Let's go to the text dump. See where he refers to it. No way. Oh my god. What? Oh my god, I was looking through, so I'm looking through these, like, where roots has been translated to see if it uses that way of writing it. And all I'm seeing is like roots. It hasn't been translated. It's just been kept in the English characters for the prophecy or whatever. Whereas other words hadn't been changed. But this line in chapter 5 has enabled us to actually see what he used. And right here we've got neko. And I was wrong. Deltarune does use kanji. At times, I guess. If it's simple enough. That's unreal. I genuinely don't know what to say. I'm actually... Oh, okay. I've been kind of memeing in this. That's unreal, guys. Friend is coming. And even more... Maneko neko. Maneko neko. I was only looking for this maneko part. We get a maneko neko. So it's like a copycat cat. I think that's probably just meant, like, it probably just comes out as meaning just like it's just a copycat, okay? But isn't that interesting? That exactly what I was talking about. It does happen here. Eventually. And so that's why I think that you should treat this pretty importantly, because this is a pretty big clue that this copycat phrase is actually important. And it continues. So Brady recounts Copycat Beach ukulele story in the alleyway. She says, and I think this is in chapter 2, maybe? I'm actually not sure. But it's definitely not chapter 1. So Brady recounts, today I went to the beach to play my uke, and guess who's already there? That copycat, playing the same song I wanted to play. Oh my god, cat on the beach, grody. Did she get lost looking for the litter box? So I tried to play the same song too. to, you know, assert my ukulele dominance. And we end up, get this, playing the whole song together. Like, oh my god, who does this girl think she is? She thinks she can, like, harmonize with me? I can't stand her. So she's still talking about a copycat here, so this is like the third time. She can't stand being with, or harmonizing with her, which is almost like a bit of a amalgamation, I guess. And she's sitting here in this alleyway with the everyman. She doesn't want to be with Bratty. Sorry, she doesn't want to be with Caddy. She does not want to harmonize with her. It's also a bit strange because music at the beach is where Onion-san supposedly went to try to find a song before he went missing. And right after that, it's a bit less substantial, but Susie ends up saying, if you do a dialogue right after that, she says, Bratty says, "Oh my god, it's like so sweet you have a nasty, dirty little friend." And, you know, we know the other nasty, dirty little friend which is running about, probably. And then we've got Caddy's POV of that same incident. She says, "Oh my god, Kris, you're not going to believe this. I was at the beach playing ukulele, right? And, like, that green alligator, evil neighbor girl, like, invaded and started, like, playing my song with me. Oh my god, like, it was so fun. Haha, wait, isn't she, like, my enemy?" Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. It's just pretty much the same thing.
With your powers combined.
Okay, Candidate 3, the Knight. In other words, the Shapeshifting Knight. And this is where the theory is all going to come together, because we get to talk about who the Knight is based on the magic that we're talking about here. So, here's the big reveal for what the Knight is. The Knight is an Amalgamate. Now, people have suggested this theory before, but I'm going to go into a bit more like why this is a thing, and it's because of the shapeshifting, which is what ties to Friend's powers and everything. Here's some of the evidence. So the Knight, when they do their roaring, they open up their rib cage, and they, you know, it's pretty like graphic. Their whole head changes with their helmet, and that's important because if you look at all of the other lighteners, and presumably the Knight is a lighten up since they can enter the light world, or they at least can can at least be in the light world, okay? So if they're entering the dark world, well then with the other lighteners, right? The other lighteners, they don't go black and white. They can't, like, you know, open their chests or something. Like, can you imagine if that happened with Noelle or with Kris or with Susie? It would be crazy. They don't do that. They can change their clothes. Like, their clothes change, all of them, upon entering. And Kris can change people's clothes, it seems like, during their acts, and with Aqua as well. But again, they never change their body parts. That just never happens. And there's no precedent of that. The only person who's doing that is the Knight. Doesn't happen with Asgore or anybody, or with Birdly. Now, Amalgamates have weird bodies with unnatural movements. If you just go to the True Lab, you see some of them will be stars, like the determination save point thing, and they will change into a completely different like creature, like totally different shape, completely. And you have a bunch more where their bodies just move weirdly, especially when first interacted with. So they can shapeshift, and that's a big connection because we've been talking about how Friend can shapeshift, and here we're getting to the amalgams are the other thing in they're another thing in the Undertale Deltarune universe which can shapeshift. So yeah, amalgams, they're all monochrome just like the Knight is. They are made up of multiple forms, so you know, you combine two different creatures and then they have aspects of both of them. You can combine like another creature to make three, and then they have another aspect of them. So the Knight glitches and melts like an Amalgamate does when it's damaged enough. This is just speculation, but potentially, because Alphys goes into this in the True Lab in the entries, she mentions that when the monsters of family members who have fallen down, they like offer them up as like for science or whatever, like Asgore Ortisis or something. It's effectively like when they're fallen down, it's when monsters are in like a comatose, like almost dead state. And so they're gonna die, and so they get given to science basically, and then Alphys does experiments on them. And the promise is that they're gonna get the dust back after the experimentation is done. And Alphys is doing these amalgamation experiments where no dust ends up happening because the amalgams they stay alive because they're still there. It's just their bodies are all merged together. So she's being hounded for the monster dust, and she can't provide it because it's not there anymore. So just keeping that in mind, this might be an explanation for what's happened with Des and why nobody can find Des. Can't even find a body of Des because she has been brought into this kind of process. And been made a part of the Knight. Okay. Now, one of the first things that you see they do, and this has been quite contentious among the community because it's like, okay, yeah, the first part definitely looks like a bat, and that's intentional. But then it kind of like turns into a sword, like, and it's just obvious. Something can't be a bat and a sword at the same time. Okay, like, it needs to be said. However, you can change them. And so if that's true, if people simultaneously believe, this seems to be the consensus, is that it is a bat at the start, but then for the rest of the fight, it's just a sword. So if that's true, well then the bat has shapeshifted into a sword, just like that. Then additionally, they fly away like a bird, which is, I mean, it's just clear shapeshifting. There's no way you can say that that's not shapeshifting. The wiki says it's shapeshifting, it's just shapeshifting. And it would be completely insane if Susie, just imagine, Susie's like, oh, Kris, hey, get this, I learned this from Flowery, I could turn into a bird. Like, it's never happened, and I don't think it will. That just seems crazy. Okay, so now this part, you're absolutely going, oh, actually, I should just go back for a sec. If you're just listening, you should maybe look at the pictures here just to get an eye for what I've been talking about with the Knight. Like, okay, yeah, you can go back in the video if you want to see that more. Okay, but you got to look at the pictures here as well. Like, everybody has to look at the pictures. You see this ball, like the cat curled up in a ball, okay? Looks pretty similar to the ball that the Knight turns into. It's very, very odd, very uncanny when you actually look at it. And cats do this, they curl up into balls. They curl up into balls around their young, which we're going to get to, and they just do it when they're sleeping. It just happens when they're feeling pretty comfortable. Okay. And this is also skipping over, of course, the title, which you probably saw first, which is Jockington is the Knight. Okay, like what? This is a worthless theory. Jockington can't be the Knight, right? Okay, but we've been going over Jockington, and we're going to get into this because it's kind of it's a lot more likely than you would expect. Okay, that's true at minimum. And yeah, it's like worse than Papyrus Knight, right? Yeah. Okay, so with Kris. They close their eyes in Chapter 4 and imagine the Knight. You might remember this, but the image of the Knight began to fade into your mind. The image changes. The helmet begins to come off. Suddenly, you tried extremely hard to picture Jockington. It's like, what? Why Jockington? Jockington is in a nest, and the soccer balls are his eggs. Temmie shows up, and it's mad that one of the soccer balls is... And then it cuts off there, okay? So of course you take that as a joke at the start, and you try to think that Kris is like, trying to prevent us knowing who the Knight is, which implies that Kris knows who the Knight is, by the way. So Kris is trying to be like, just think of Jockington. That's going to be like the joke that nobody understands, like so nobody knows who the Knight is. But Kris is taking this very seriously, and it might be because that they're trying to so seriously try to think of a joke, but like they're really serious about it. This is what Susie says to Kris. Like, you were just standing there with your eyes closed, then you just started breathing hard, and so this is definitely not a joke circumstance to Kris. Kris isn't finding it funny, no matter what. And what's interesting about this is because of the balls being pictured here. And what's also interesting is that back in Chapter 1, which we already went over, Jockington talks about how he would take off his hat in remembrance of Kris. And I said at that point that that could be a reference to what will happen with the knight when the knight takes off their helmet, and then, which is like Jockington's cool hat, as he puts it, and then they'll like kill Kris or do something bad to Kris. And that's just referencing this with taking off the helmet. So anyway, so yeah, as I mentioned before, cats curl up with their young in a ball just like that. And snakes sort of do, but cats definitely do. Like into a proper ball, rather than just like a coil kind of thing. Everybody's been theorizing eggs are protein, and thus Friend desires them. Well, if Jockington is Friend, it makes a lot of sense that they would have a lot of eggs in their nest, of course. They would be collecting them, potentially. Collecting them for Gaster as well, because the eggs are apparently an issue, according to the PlayStation achievements, I think it's for. Maybe for more of the console achievements, I'm not sure. Yeah, so this implies that Jockington may be part of the Knight as an amalgam, I think, because of his... the ball form would be coming from Jockington, basically. Because of how much Jockington mentions balls, how much he's into sports, and potentially, if it's Friend, well then the cat form would be this ball form. So I think there is some connection there. But if this is true, well then there should be a way to account for the other forms, because there's the deer form, slash holiday form, and then there's the bird form. But here's something very odd. Very odd. At the front of the takoyaki stand, with normal NPC, you've got this scared donut person. That's the NPC name. And they're from Undertale, and they're also a goner. They say, "Damn you, oh circular dough." Hey, screw you! Don't call her circular. That's what Susie says. And then Noelle says, "He didn't mean dough, Susie." Well, she thinks that. And then Donut says, "I spent 2G on this. I didn't even know I had G." Stuff like this makes me hate holidays. Like, why does he say that? He just randomly, like, blurts out he hates holidays for no reason. But Susie mistakes him for saying circular dough, like the deer, rather than circular dough, which is the, like, for bread and stuff, you know? And what's more interesting about that is it's like circular dough, so it's like a female deer, but as a knight candidate, and just the only deer we know in town, they're all part of the holiday family. And so he also says, stuff like this makes me hate holidays. It's very bizarre, and it's reminiscent of when Rudy's like, depends which holiday, when, you know, talking about, like, he says that holidays are full of surprises, which is like referring to his family. But it's a bit of a pun. But yeah, this guy just like randomly is like, I hate holidays. And yeah, of course the circular dough part is like, okay, well, a circular dough, there is no circular looking dough in Deltarune. All of the holiday family, they're pretty lanky. They're usually fairly tall in proportion. They're just not round in any shape or form. The only place where you find these round circular doughs is with the ball form of the knight. And so that line lowers the probability that the knight is anybody but a dough, which means that it lowers the probability that it's Rudy or it's Asriel or whoever. But it doesn't necessarily lower them if it's an amalgamate. What it does do is it heightens Carol, Des, and Noelle. So, why do we need a bird form explanation for the knight? We need this because currently, with the way that the game is, with the way that theories are going, nobody has a proper explanation for what happened with Undyne and with Asgore. There were quite a few different like cope theories about what was going on with Undyne, like how do people carry Undyne? Because Undyne's supposed to be very powerful, right? And it's like, well, how does anybody carry Undyne? Like, Undyne's like, she's supposed to be, I think, like the most powerful monster. Like, she's not really, but like, Sansa's pretty powerful and stuff, but she's supposed to be really, really powerful. And it just didn't really make too much sense how Des could, or I don't know, even Rudy, like, you know, some of these characters are said to be strong, but it's like, you're gonna be running and carrying this? Like, it's kind of crazy. And you kind of just put it down to, well, you know, whatever, it's a story, you know, the kidnapping has to work somehow, whatever. But it really, really loses sense when we get to Asgore, because Asgore he's huge. He's said to be 10 foot 20, the Flower Man. And he's just big, you know? He's big, he's strong, and I can't see anybody just grabbing him and running. Especially not one of the weaker characters. And Rudy, who was said to be fairly strong, he was fallen down at that point, so there's no way he was doing that. Unless they, you know, shocked him with some experimental drug or something, it just makes no sense. And so because of that, we need some explanation which is effectively just like, it's just magic, okay? We need something big to figure this out. And it's better not to, you know, just say like it's magic and leave it at that. It's just like, oh yeah, whatever, we don't know, it's some mysterious thing. I really don't understand what kind of rational explanation that would be there with the information that we've got right now. I think it has to involve magic, and I think it makes sense that if the Knight can shapeshift, which we know that they can do, they can carry people while they're shapeshifted, like they do with Undyne with the bird form. I believe it makes perfect sense if they can continue the shapeshifting when they're in the light world. However, it doesn't make any sense if we think that the magic's not possible out of the dark world, which was our current understanding, right? But if we've proven that Jockington is a fake and has been shapeshifted this whole time by Friend, it means that shapeshifting magic is absolutely possible in the light world. And what that means is that the Knight can then use that shapeshifting ability to carry whoever they want and continue using their powers, basically. And that just explains what happened. The way that I want you to think about this is that the Dark Worlds themselves, they are like a magic that exists in the Light World, obviously. How Ralsei explains it is that in the dark, when things get darker, you start to see more. When they go darker than dark, you can see things in them, and that's what Dark Worlds are. It's like where the imagination kind of runs wild. You can start to see things that aren't even there. And what I would suggest is that the Knight and Friend, they're made up of the same kind of thing. And they're things that it's almost like bringing like a dark fountain with you, like as an entity, where you yourself can shapeshift because you're so dark that you can manipulate how people see you as an illusion. And that's basically just the magic of Deltarune. And it's pretty much all just that. It's just using darkness to create whatever you want. Now, as an aside, or sort of an aside, one of the powers of the Bakeneko is to control the dead. And if Friend has a master, as Pink said that they do, then that control may extend to them as well, which could be Irem or Gasta, and that would mean that the Knight, if they're composed of a bunch of dead people, well then they could potentially just be straight up under control. If it's like a necromancy thing. Which would then explain like what they're doing as a motive. And that ties into what I'm talking about with the prophecy, in that if you want to change the prophecy, you need to start eliminating people, and you need to start making them do what you want. Otherwise, the prophecy will happen the same way. So I think Gasta might be trying to do increasingly extreme measures in order to prevent the prophecy from happening. And the Knight is just one of those methods. And so I think that the Knight is probably some sort of amalgamate experiment, which sort of went successfully. It's a being that's stronger when combined and filled with determination, a little bit like how it was said that you need a monster soul, I think it's like a monster soul and a human soul or whatever to break the barrier in Undertale. You need combinations of things. Or sorry, you need a monster like with a human soul to break the barrier. So you need these combinations, and they can become even stronger. But there's a failure rate to it, like a fairly high failure rate, where things go bad. But when it does go well, you get Asriel, who has all sorts of powers and stuff. So I think that the deer form is basically, which is obviously clear in the Knight. It's basically the Knight has, Friend has killed a holiday in the past, and has then put that into the Amalgamate. I think they would have put it into it within the meat factory or something like that. So within the bunker or something. And that could be Death's, but on the weird route, things change, and it allows aspects of Noelle to be included in the Knight, potentially, because people have been talking about Noelle and Kris maybe being the Knight. I think there is a possibility of that, but I would say that it's just one part of the Knight. It's not the whole thing. Yeah, and with Kris and Noelle Knighters, the big issue in that theory is explaining why are Kris and Noelle even doing what they're doing. It just makes no sense. Even if they were able to go back in time, even if you get past the time paradox thing, because the Knight has no explanation for why they exist, to begin with. Well, it's actually okay, because if they're being forced to do this, if they're being puppeted, well then as zombies effectively, well then it makes sense that they would be doing whatever the Knight's doing. And one part, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but with Friend, I think the entire point of Friend is to get victims, right? And to target members of the prophecy. But it's also to lure other members of the prophecy, or other people who will get in the way of plans, down to be killed as well. So the luring aspect is a point here as well. Yeah, Death Knighters still have a shot here, and this also explains why Death can go missing after the first fountain is already opened. I don't think it says that the Knight does it at the start, or maybe it does. I can't really remember, but it doesn't matter, because the Knight at that point, even if there were a Knight, they could be the original Knight, the Knight that is made up of probably a Titan or some other darkness, and then whoever the original person is. And that original is pre-amalgamation of Death. And that would be an interesting thing to theorize about who that original person is, whether they're a Knight or not, or whatever. But yeah, so they're trying to lure Death. The Knight has features of Friend. They laugh exactly, and it is exactly like Friend does in the scene that I'm showing on the screen now, where you've got the Knight in chapter 4, just before they summon a Titan. You've got the black with the white outlines, the shape-shifting abilities, and I don't think that they're the same thing, but I do think that they're made of the same stuff. But they could be the same thing. I'm not really sure. So the Queen, when she talks about making a Knight, she says, she wants to make a new one or whatever, and all three of Kris, Susie, and Noelle, they come together, and then they create, they're forming the Knight or whatever. People have talked about that with Kris and Noelle, but thought I'd throw it in there. So here are the conclusions of the Knight. Shapeshifting is possible. It's a magic that is possible in the light world. There is an evil presence with a master who controls a pack of friends. These friends hunt people for their protein. This concept is very old in Toby's mind. Temmie has knowledge adjacent to it in 2018 at least. Several mysterious Undertale songs tie into this, with a more mystery song and the meat factory. The Knight also shapeshifts, and they shapeshift into a ball as well there. They seem to have some agenda. There's also the police sacrifice thing that the mysterious phone call talks about, which some people say is Carol, but we don't know. Amalgamates are creatures fitting the appearance of several monsters and have the ability to change their shape. The Knight can change its form and resemble an amalgamate in several ways. Friend also resembles an amalgamate in the only place we see them clearly. That's a big deal with Ralsei talking about them. Like, friend is an amalgamate. That's just, well, I don't know how else you can say it. Like, they have the same kind of essence to them, which presumably they have similar powers. So, therefore, without assuming extra explanations, which we're yet to receive, which could totally be possible, you know, we've still got 2 chapters left, Toby could pull up all sorts of random magical explanations, which we are yet to get. But I think, since they're explicable now, we should probably lean on these. Now, onto everybody's favourite fluffy boy, Ralsei. The Asriel lookalike and the mysterious prince from darkness. So, I don't think that Ralsei's actually friend. I don't think that they're, you know, going to pop up in chapter 6, start laughing and be like, I've been evil all this time. That's not going to happen. But I think he has friend-like abilities, and he might be made of similar stuff. Or made from similar experiments by Gaster. I think his intentions are good. He cares about Kris and Susie, and stopping the roaring, and preventing the prophecy from going how it goes. But that is also what I feel like Gaster's, what his motivations are. And so I think that this reveals something about his master's intentions being more good than we might expect. And it also reveals he actually has a master who he serves. And despite it's like Gaster, he's doing all of these things. He's doing all these things that seem very, very evil in order to prevent the prophecy. Like he's killing people. But he's very much like a means, like toward an end. And he's doing this because he's ascended to a different part of the program where it's at a higher level. He kind of realizes it's all a bit trivial. And so he's doing all of this in order to try to change the world, pretty much. And he's probably lost sight of the individuals within it because it's been reset so many times with the timeline. Or with the way that he's recreated the world with the prophecy. I don't know. But I think that's the kind of thing we're going for here.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
So, for the evidence, we've got Ralsei is pretending about what he is. This is just... It's almost explicit. Like, it's pretty clear. So, you've got on the side here with the images, you've got Flowery's confrontation with Ralsei toward the end. Flowery's like...
Don't you like serving humans?
Ralsei says, you're just pretending to be something you're not. And Flowery says, oh, Ralsei, want to tell them what's wrong with that? So, Ralsei's pretending to be something that he's not, which is very strange. Because that would mean that Ralsei's not a typical Darkner. Which is what he's always said that he is. And Flowery also says...
Don't you like serving humans?
And that's very, very odd. Because Ralsei doesn't really serve Kris. Like, their relationship, I thought, was a bit more of a friendship. Like, maybe Ralsei says that darkness is supposed to serve lightness, but Ralsei, he never says that his role is to serve humans. Which is, it is odd that he says that, because the Flowery could have very easily just said, don't you like serving lightners? And that would have been way more accurate. And Ralsei doesn't really seem to deny that part or question it. Although he doesn't affirm it either, but... one thing I thought here, which might be the case, but this is like, this is quite speculative, is that Gaster might be human originally, and it depends what skeletons actually are. I thought that there's a bit of a morbid note here, which is sort of related to that tale I mentioned at the start about Bake Neko, which is that if cats seek out protein, what if humans were stripped of all of their protein? What would you have left? And of course, it would be a skeleton. And you have to think that potentially, it sounds really weird, but if you wanted to hide from one of these things, and they never give up. If there's protein, if they find a source of protein, they're not going to give up. Well, the only way that you would stop it is if you strip yourself of all your protein, which of course is all of the meat, all the flesh, all the organs, everything. And that's quite unnerving to think about because of how Papyrus is totally missing. Nobody knows. Well, you know, he's hiding basically. Like we haven't seen him yet. And how Sans seemingly shifts like world line or something. Like he shifts to a totally different world. And Gaster is also totally in the shadows, and he seems to be working with these cats. Potentially, one of these cats might have turned on him, or you know, he's had his flesh stripped off for some other reason. But it's just a thought I had. Anyway, so the reason why he has no clue what it means to be Ralsei-like is because he's just been faking this entire time. He's been pretending. I think that he's probably a creature of darkness who was created by Gaster for a specific purpose, and he's actually a lot like us, which is kind of odd because we were also brought into the story by Gaster in order to fulfill a particular purpose, seemingly, because otherwise why were we brought in? Like, we were specifically brought in. We didn't just show up, we were brought in by the guy who speaks in all caps. He knows way too much about the future, which is, he knows more than Jockington, seemingly. He knows so much. Ralsei's continually, every time we find out something new, it's like, oh, yeah, Ralsei's like, oh, yeah, no, I knew about that because I read the prophecy or whatever. He knows a lot. Yeah, if it's possible for Jockington to be considered as still being Jockington for the sake of the prophecy, if he's merely being imitated, even though he's only being imitated, then it would also mean that the Prince of the Dark, which is referenced in the prophecy, would be Ralsei could be that, even if it were originally intended to be Asriel. And if that were true, that would mean that Asriel has been dead and has been replaced, and this is why Ralsei takes on his appearance, because they've already processed his meat in the meat factory. And here we get to one of the hilarious panels, which is, you know, hidden in a 4-hour video or however long this is going to go for. Which is, Asriel is dead? Asriel's meat theory? What? Yeah, we don't care about Asriel's dust here. Okay, Asriel might be dead. He's not dust, he's meat. Okay, so the most common refrain from Asriel being dead is that the behavior of Hometown seems completely unreasonable if Asriel were actually dead. The adults couldn't possibly lie this much about him without noticing. And I completely agree with that. They make so many random references to him being at college, and I don't see how it could work. It couldn't work even if, like, it would have to be like Toriel and Asgore and like so many different people like saw that Asriel said that he was going to college, and then like most of the town wouldn't have seen it, and they only got it secondhand. Like, it would just require so much random stuff to be going on there for it to work out. And I haven't even fully analyzed like all of the different ways that it would be a problem. But basically, most of Hometown genuinely believes that Asriel has gone to college, and they feel that they have good reason to believe that. However, with this theory in mind, what if Asriel were mimicked before saying that he was going to college? So, the timeline here is that he dies, perhaps in search of Jess or with her on some adventure, and he is then brought to the meat factory by a friend, and then a friend adjacent entity is made to replace him, like Ralsei, or just like friend does it, like I say that they are doing with Jockington. And so, because that they can't mimic people very well, this friend, they just really have one task, which is to basically crash out at their house, and to just get very mad at their parents or something, maybe make something up about divorce or something, I don't know. But they get very mad and they just say, nah, I'm going to college, like, screw you mum and dad, I'm leaving. And he does that, and then he's off to college, and then whoever can in the Gaster bunker can just pretend to be Asriel for a little bit. With the same voice, because it doesn't seem like the voice change is noticeable. It's just a very strange way of speaking. But you know, just with some messages like online saying, "Yeah, no, I'm at college, whatever." I think they could pull it off for a short amount of time. And they just don't want Asriel to be in the town to be mimicked, because they feel like they would get busted if they did that, pretty much. Like Gaster feels that way, I mean. And yeah, like this would be fairly believable because teens and young adults, they frequently act quite uncharacteristically in bouts of rage, especially in a stressful situation involving like divorce and the disappearance of their lover potentially. And so I think it's perfectly believable that Toriel and Asgore, you know, seeing this, they're just like, yeah, well, okay, Asriel he wants to get away from all this, and it's totally understandable. And even if he acted a bit strange leaving, it just makes sense. He could have, you know, locked himself up in his room for half the time, who knows. As for, like, where the Mimic of Death is, like, why is there not a Mimic of Death? Like, why have they just let Death be missing? Because they've let Asriel, like, they made a cover story for Asriel, but they didn't for Death, right? I think the reason for this is because Death is already amalgamated into the Knight, and so they have no ability to create a regular Death's body double to account for her. Alternatively, she is actually in hiding still, because she's being chased by Friend or something. But yeah, because Alfie says that she couldn't give back the remains, you know, of the dust in the True Lab. It's just the same thing with Death. And yeah, you gotta remember that some things react differently to the experiments, so some work out extremely well, some don't. Also, in regard to like whether Asriel would turn into dust or meat when he dies, like we just don't know that in Deltarune. We don't know how monsters die. We don't know what we don't know whether they give dust or if they give meat. We don't know that in Gersten's case. He could have been cremated. We straight up don't know. They also like bury. They do bury things, so it's like, okay, well I guess they bury dust. I don't know. We just don't know. It seems to have been intentionally hidden. But with the meat factory around, yeah, I don't know. I assume there's meat. So, this is a very important part with Ralsei, is that he knows about Friend. And I think maybe Ralsei might just be like an Asriel who, like a bit like Asriel in Undertale, who was like successful in the True Lab experiments. Just like Flowey was. Yeah, but I think that Ralsei is like is a positive version of Friend. They're there to steer the prophecy, but in a positive manner within, like as a person within the party, rather than as an enemy. The objective isn't just to screw with the party, it's to change the prophecy, and to do that you need to be on the inside and on the outside. And to do it most convincingly on the inside, you need to be good. You need to be trusted. And I think that Ralsei is being used basically. I think that they are authentic. They want to do good, but they're going to be used for some nefarious purpose, or for some odd purpose at least. Now, the clearest image that we ever get of Friend is when Ralsei talks about them. It's the image that I'm showing on the screen there. That's what happens when Ralsei talks about the Dark World. And I think that this is still the only canon, like the unmissable appearance of Friend. I think all of the other ones might be, you could miss them. So, this one is kind of crazy. And, well, we're going to get to the crazy part next, but this has some lyrics. So when Ralsei makes up the lyrics in Raise Up Your Bat, he, like, for each line, it kind of gets halfway through, and then it changes to the Ralsei censored version, because Ralsei doesn't like that the song talks about, like, blood, I guess, and demon hearts, those kinds of things. So he changes the names to be a bit friendlier. But in that censorship, he does some crazy things with the lyrics, and to the point where they kind of seem even scarier than what Dess's original edgy version was. Or at least we don't know who made the lyrics, but it's presumably Dess. It seems like that. And you can always just go back to this part of the video to compare the lyrics for the whole thing. Okay, so these are the Ralsei lyrics for the first part, these are the lines that I found kind of interesting. So he says, when the happy heart is smiling, which smiling is like a super common thing with Gaster, Kara. It's just smiling happens all the time with like creepy, weird enemies to symbolize evil. Raise up your hat for a funny sight. This is very interesting with Jockington's line of raising up his hat with remembrance for Kris. And it could also just refer to Ralsei because he raises up his hat and then, you know, he's got the white goat appearance. So it's like I guess it's kind of funny, you know, maybe he's singing about himself. Blinding light is a theory that I might make later, but I'm not going to go into it now. But I might make that as a second video, so, you know, like the video or something, because I'll do that. If this gets enough attention. Yeah, if the knight's helmet were actually taken off, you would get a funny sight, because it laughs like friend. It's like it's a crazy thing. And you would wonder who's under there, especially if it's like Jockington or something. Then he says, he sings, when your cat is slowly sighing. Why is he talking about cats here? It's bizarre. I don't know why, there's just no reason for it, he's just randomly talking about cats. And then it says, and its fur is looking white. So white tails are a sign of buck and echo. And it could be a reference to Ralsei because he's originally pitch black. But then when he gets his hat removed, he goes completely white. And that might be a reference to what could happen with Friend if they're exposed to light, which I think might be the way that we destroy Friend, because with the light from the red soul, that's the thing that destroys Titan spawn, Titans, and it could destroy Friend as well. And it does pose a question for why Ralsei doesn't seem to be impacted by that. Because they seem to be able to, or he seems to be able to go near the light with Kris and still be okay. But a lot of these dark creatures seem to not like it very much, especially the deeper dark ones. And if Friend is a creature of the deep dark, well then they would go totally white. This next line was really confusing to me. I'm not really sure about it, but make sure to check your mat for mites. So Susie checks Kris's hair for mites. And mites are common among birds, cats, and snakes, but apart from that, I really don't know. It might just be a throwaway line. Now the last one, this is a very interesting one. Let's get your friends and fly a kite. So, Ralsei's talking about friends there. Okay, interesting. Kite seems to me to be in reference to flying, which could be a reference to the angel. And what's interesting about that is, on the screen, I've got a picture of Noelle there, in the T-pose, the Jesus style T-pose, like a crucifix. And Noelle also has a thorn ring, which is like Jesus' crown of thorns, so there's multiple references there. And because she's in a T-pose, you know what else has a T-pose, or like what has a cross shape to it? A kite. A very typical kite, as I've displayed there on the screen, has a cross frame, and then it's got the paper or whatever to actually fly it, which is quite interesting, I think, because the angel is supposed to fly up with its wings. Here's the worst Ralsei lyric of all, embedded deep into this video, which I didn't see anybody else talk about before I noticed it. So, I bet my friends still want to bite. I saw this like pretty much right after the pink, update came out. I was looking through, I think I just searched the dialogue for bite or something, and I saw that, and I was like, huh? Why is Ralsei talking about friends wanting a bite? Like he knows about friends wanting a bite, and he knows about Friend. Why is he talking about that? And just a minor thing, because it's like, you know, the other lyrics, they kind of make it seem a little bit softer, because it's like, and your future's really bright. Bring extra s'mores to the campsite. I bet my friends still want to buy it. S'mores are interesting because amalgamates look like they kind of melt, and they melt together. And a s'more is like you sandwich the marshmallow and the chocolate together, right? You create this kind of mixture in between things by squashing them. And Ralsei also has fire powers, so it's like the campfire with the s'mores. And the text of those lines, they're not displayed the same. Some of them are like shorter or longer. I think it's like to match the song, I think. But in any case, s'mores is heavily squashed in that line. Like, it's really, really squashed compared to the other words. Which seems to imply that the s'mores are like a squashing. Which, it's a lot of speculation, but it could be pointing to some sort of amalgamation, some sort of squashing, along with the biting there. And my best guess for what Ralsei's like singing about is he's either just singing like the first things that are coming to his head, which is just revealing some like stuff that he doesn't want to reveal, or he's talking about maybe some other version of the prophecy or something. Don't really know, but he clearly knows something. This one's like big speculation. It's just I'll go through it anyway. At the start of chapter 3, he discusses the Dark Worlds and shows friend on the screen, and his title says at that point Dark Prince, Dark World Being, has friends, but, which is interesting if you've been following along here, because it's like he is a Dark World being and he has friends, but there's something different about him, maybe. And then at the end of chapter 3, after fighting Temmie, which was at the night fight, it says level 3 Dark Prince, Dark World Being, has friends. It doesn't say button anymore. And I don't know what this really means, but in both cases it mentions him having friends, which could be totally innocuous, but I've been looking over each time friends pops up, and it always seems to be around something weird that could be connected with this whole friend thing. I think it probably just refers to Ralsei just being like doubtful that he has friends or whatever, and chapter 3 is where he starts to be like, oh yeah, no, actually maybe these people are like they are my friends, I'm not just a Darkner. Susie wants to take me to the festival, but I can't go, but it still means that we're friends, so it could be totally innocuous. Continuing on, we've got the random miscellaneous bonus section. This is the part where just go over random stuff, which you can kind of think about after if you just kind of assume that what I've said so far has some truth to it, along with all the evidence, well then some of this could be true too. So, is Shaum a Bakaneko? So, Toby says, and this is about Shaum in a first merch, I think it was, and he provided this illustration, which is on the screen, about what Shaum looked like, because he didn't actually know what Shaum would look like, whether he should have a tail or not. That's what he says at least. So, because he's hidden behind a counter, right? So Toby says, although it could sort of be considered official, there's no tail. Should they have a fluffy tail? Should they have a large fluffy tail? Or maybe it was torn off by cruel and loving hands. Anyway, by now, the tail in your mind should be stronger than anything I show you. Don't be discouraged. And then we've got the Bakaneko Wikipedia page, which says, cats with long tails were disliked, and there was a custom of cutting their tails. It is speculated that this is the reason that there were so many cats in Japan with short tails now. Natural selection having favoured those with a short tail. I think the straightforward meaning to this is that children just ripped off Shaum's tail while they were playing with him, because it's in the school, right? There's also a part of Bakaneko's, like in the folklore about it, that if you would leave a cat with a tail that grows too long, if you would leave it like that, it would continue to grow, and if it got too long, well then a Bakaneko would appear. And so if there was ever a prominent long tail, you would cut it off in order to prevent their transformation into a Bakaneko. And so you could see this as actually a bit of a sign of love, because if you want your cat to survive and not become this monster who's going to start like killing your family, And, you know, like, they're no longer your loving pet anymore, right? So it's actually a mercy to cut off their tail. And that's kind of interesting because Shawm, it's not just that, because Shawm has a lot of magical powers, it seems. It seems they're very strong in their magic. I didn't put quotes for it here, but they mention at one point that you've recruited a bunch of, like, powerful mages, or no, you've, like, recruited a bunch of mages, but they're just nothing to him because Shawm's, like, already beat them. And he's got this staff and everything. We just haven't seen his magic yet, but he's been sort of rumored to be quite strong, or presented that way. And he's also the one who, well, it says that the shadow crystals, sorry, the pure crystal in the game file says that it's the crystal purified by the cat or something like that. And Shawm is the one interested in the shadow crystals, of course, and so it seems to make sense that the shadow crystals would then create the pure crystal after they've been purified by the cat. And Shawm's a cat, so it seems to make sense, right? Yeah, Shawm also stands on 2 legs, just like a buckernecker does. And he speaks in a human language too, but that's pretty normal for darkness and stuff, so not much to say there. Yeah, something to think about. Now we're going to go into what we know about Mike from Tenor. And I've spoken about Mike a little bit before, and we're going to get into that. So, Tenor identifies Mike as a jokester, and I believe all this dialogue is from the stuff that Toby released, I think it was around Christmas time. He released like a scene from Chapter 5, which it's in there as well, but anyway. Tenor identifies Mike as a jokester. Jockington/friend often laugh. Haha, you're always a jokester, Mike. Tenor feels like everything is fake, and that Mike would know what he means by it. That's what Tenor says. That's why, since then, it feels like you're not really here. Everything is fake. When the curtain falls, everything just feels like playing pretend. You know what I mean, Mike? So he seems to think that Mike knows what it means to play pretend. And this is reminiscent of when Flowery asks Ralsei, and he says, like, oh yeah, you'd really know what that means, you know, like playing pretend. And both of these creatures I've identified as potentially being like shapeshifters. We'll get into that soon. So Mike's size is variable. We should keep an eye on it. The size of Mike's ass seems really variable lately. Yeah, you know, it's probably just a joke, but, you know, I couldn't help myself from adding every bit of evidence. But Tenet does say to keep an eye on it, okay? So keep an eye on it. So more about mic rooms. I personally don't really like the mic rooms very much. I never actually played them. It's the one part of Deltarune that I just couldn't. I couldn't play it at the time because I really disliked the concept of them. But I did watch a video playing through them all. Shout out to Mr. Brick & Co. I think I watched their video on it. You know, like the whole crew or whatever. But yeah, so I do have some familiarity with them. I did look at the wiki pages, but some of this stuff might be, you know, a little bit wrong or whatever, because I'm not like intimately familiar with it, which is crazy, you know, being the friend guy, making such a huge video on it. But I don't like the mic rooms because I like friend. But anyway, so the cats bite like friend. One of the mics says this. They say feeding the cats, training them, getting bit. I didn't write it here, but they also mention like there are potentially many. No, not potentially. They say that they have like different mics. So, like one's good at talking, one's like the muscle, one's whatever. I think potentially there might be different types of friends. So it's not all just the same. There might be a friend who is actually good at talking, while most of them aren't good at talking. There could be a friend that is actually quite powerful, like with muscle, while the others aren't. But again, with all of this, one of the reasons I don't like the mic rooms is that they're so filled with jokes and irony and like making fun of theories that it's very difficult to tell what is actually presented as like as a real thing versus what is not. Oh no, I did actually mention it here. Yeah, friends might be split up into roles. Okay, I just didn't mention the quote, I guess. Yeah, we learned that there's actually multiple mics in that, and we learned that before we learned the recent pink stuff about there being multiple friends. Mike is established as somebody who takes orders and executes from the shadows. That's what Tanner says about them. And what's very interesting about that, which I kind of went over before, is that if this were happening, if Tenor gives an order and it gets carried out and nobody knows who did it, that could be possible if there is a friend that's, you know, chilling there, shapeshifting into other people. They could be doing all of these things without it ever being identified as, like, Mike is doing this. So the concept of Mike, which is friend, is doing all of this stuff all around the place. They're just doing it as like a Pippin or whoever. Doing all that stuff, but they're just never, like, the task is never like, oh yeah, Mike did this. Like, but it is said that Mike did it. It's just there's no person that did it that they can really point to. It's always somebody else. This is also why they're continuously saying that, you know, one of them did do it, or like, you know, somebody did it, but like who they actually saw or whatever. But it's never actually tracked down for all of them, which seems to mean that Mike is just doing all this shapeshifting. In the Mike mini games, well, I think the mics themselves, I think they dance as well, and they're all on, you know, 2 feet. You've got the mic, the cat mic, who does that. It says fuzz balls are mentioned. Balls plus fur. That is like a important thing, I feel like. There are some fuzzy balls, and balls are an important thing to keep in mind. In the cowboy mic minigame Airwaves, yeah, it's block the fuzz balls as long as possible. And remember, we said that the cat is, you know, the cat curled up. It's like a fuzzy ball. In the main performance game, you mimic hand positions. So it's like mimicking, but it's also like, you know, Gaster hands, I guess. But, you know, mimic. Cat's mimicking. And there's a game where it like rains and you gotta get the cats out of the water. I still don't know what's going on with the cats in water. I presume that water does something to cats, and that is the case with, I think it's with Chen. With Chen from Touhou, I mentioned who I mentioned earlier in the video, like pretty much at the start. She stops being possessed by a Shikigami, I think it is, if she gets water on her, because she doesn't like water since she's a cat. So that's something to think about. And that might mean that if you were to spray, like the way that you would reveal that Jockington is actually a friend is to like drop him in water, spray him, put a bucket on him, you know, anything like that. If that happens in the story, that would be crazy. Okay, so this is like quite a random scene. So it's in chapter 2. You've got, you should probably look at the screen for this. You've got these 2 NPCs, and I'll just read it out. Hey, got any way to deal with crushing existential dread? Asking for a friend. And then the joke is that another door opens and it's like, they're talking about me. And so it actually was a friend. It wasn't just, you know, him being insecure. So I forgot to mention here the 3rd line, which is a friend that looks and sounds exactly like me. That line's quite interesting because, of course, they've just finished talking about friend, and they say friend again, and they say that friend looks and sounds exactly like me. And that's exactly what friend does. They have the same sound, and presumably the same, like, voice sound, otherwise characters should be, like, noticing stuff like that. The difference is in, like, how they speak. It's in the grammar, it's in the words, it's in those kinds of things. But the looks and sounds, friend does that extremely well, so there could be a connection there. Now, that might seem a little bit innocuous, but they're in an area where one of the, like the first door is like a file, and then the next door is a floppy disk, which is like it's a common save symbol, right? And so this could mean that somebody is like being copied. And so it's like a file being copied, like I said at the start of the video, with Copycat being about copying files. And these NPCs, they do look a bit odd. Like I've got the one on the screen there where it's hunched over. Both normal NPC and Jockington, they're hunched over. And it does have sort of similar colors to the normal NPC, but look, I think these probably just are coincidences. I don't think that, you know, everything has to have a little meaning here, but I just thought I'd mention it. You've got a little bit of an overlap with Pink. Obviously, since Pink is a cat girl, right? She's a cat, and she's a pink and yellow cat as well. So there's overlap there already. But Mad Dummy is a ghost, which symbolizes a dead thing, even though it doesn't quite work that way in Deltarune Undertale. It does still it brings up that concept, possessing a yellow and pink cat body. Whereas Friend in my theory is a yellow and pink cat possessing / mimicking the form of a dead body. So there is this like sort of association there. And there's also the concept of like a dead cat. That's like a phrase, I guess. So both of those are kind of meshed up in the symbolism, but I can't really say what that exactly means. And of course the parallel to Kris and the Soul is quite strong. It's probably stronger, but you know, you can have two things at the same time. It doesn't have to just be one thing. This is a bunch of Titan spawns, so there's potentially some connections here, especially since Jockington references the Titan fight. And these come right before it. So you've got... I want to focus on the bottom right actually first, and you should probably look at images of this. I won't be able to explain them properly, but you've got the little snake Titan spawn, which they're like balls of fur. They're furry balls, which we talked about earlier about the Mike minigame. And balls are constantly referenced all the time, just randomly to do with this. You also get these furry Titan spawns, which are straight up just furry balls. You get these things that bite, which is very reminiscent of Friend, which bites, but is also furry and also ball shaped. You've got this red variant of a Titan spawn. It's just got an eye, but the other thing is that Friend also goes red when they in Chapter 5. They're usually not red at all, but they go fully red, just as this red variant seems to. This one, I don't know, kind of looks like a bird somewhat to me, somehow, but I really, like just with the back, which kind of looks like feathers, but apart from that, no clue. The actual fetus looking one is interesting because fetuses, when they're young in development, if you didn't know, they like for mammals and stuff, they look quite similar, and it's only later in their lifespan that they actually start to differentiate significantly. And so this could easily either be either a human or a cat. It's not really obvious, and it could be other mammals as well. They get blurry when damaged, like the Knight / Amalgamate. So that's something interesting to think about, that they are potentially made of the same stuff, which might connect with Ralsei being also able to be made of the same stuff. And of course, I forgot to mention, like this furry ball thing, it's a snake, so, you know, Jockington connection. And remember, Jockington has the knowledge of the Titan fight. This one is very, very odd. So, in the Birdly fight, I can't remember which one. It might be... I don't remember which one has these walls, but there's an unused attack where you've got these walls which are made of Friend, which is very bizarre. Like, why does Birdly have these? And all I can say is that it would make sense that a shape-shifting cat could create a wall, right? Like, they could transform themselves into a wall. I don't know how this works, if they, like, are supposed to be eating walls or whatever, but look, if they can change their form, it starts to make a bit more sense. And without that, this makes, like, no sense at all, so who knows? But it is unused, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt. This is quite interesting, because with all this shape-shifting going on, you actually get this scene with Aqua in the cafe, where she talks about shapeshifting. So the question is, can Kris shapeshift? Because Aqua asked them to. Now, I don't think that they can shapeshift, but the only reason I think that is because they only seem to change their clothes, rather than changing any like physical aspect of their body, which I think is a requirement to be a shapeshifter. And what's interesting is that Aqua specifically says to change your shape. Like, she says, Kris, change your shape, change your shape. And you should maybe look at the image here because it's got Kris dressed as Aqua. That's how they change their shape when Aqua asks. And I'll actually start from the top here. So Aqua says, "Blue, blue, blue. We are knife friends and blue." So she brings up friends there. You know, another friends thing related to shapeshifting for some reason. Kris, change your shape. Change your shape. Ooh, wait. Why can you change shape but not do magic? So very interesting that Aqua at least claims that Kris can change shape but can't do magic. And in the menu, this is quite a hidden thing, but in the menu, in the Dark World, it says that acting is not magic. It says that very specifically. And it actually changes what it says in each chapter to say that acting is not magic in a different way, which is very weird. Don't know what to make of that exactly. And I don't know if that's meant to say that shapeshifting is a different type of magic than the others, because if it is, well, it makes some sense, because if the dark world magic is something that is from the light world, well then it means that you could use it in the light world, right? Because it's just an extension. Like, we know that dark worlds can be made in the light world, and so if you could use that same power to shapeshift, well then you could do that in the light world as well. Whereas the stuff that is contained within the dark world, within the darkness, that's like a different subcategory of magic. It'd be like saying that like magic is real in real life just because video games have magic. Like, that makes no sense. But you could say that like programming itself is a form of magic, I guess, like, if that makes sense. If programming were, you know, as magical as like shapeshifting and stuff. And yeah, but maybe the fact that Aqua is pointing attention to this is just to say that Kris's changing clothes isn't shapeshifting, because otherwise people might consider it as shapeshifting, but that seems a bit deep to me. So yeah, I don't really know, but Kris can also change their sword to a shield during combat, but I still consider that to be clothes. Okay, this is a bit of a weird question. I don't really think so, but I think it's worth considering what our role is in the story. So the question is, are we a friend? Or rather, are we an agent of Gaster, like friend, like Ralsei maybe is too? So if you just think about what we are in the story, we're summoned in the world by Gaster in the Gorna Maker sequence, and then we're sent into it. And what do we do as we're doing that? We possess and even kill, so we drown Noelle and Kris and freeze Birdley. We seek out Easter eggs. We hunt down the secret bosses, and we seek out Easter eggs, that's what Friend does, right? We hunt down the secret bosses, including Spampton, who is terrified of Friend, judging by their items. We are kept out of view, even though our presence is felt all over the game. Our face peers in, smiling from the darkness. We're we're not particularly smart at our imitation of Kris. And, this might be the true meaning of friend inside me. Because, like, if we are friend, well then, yeah, we're friend. The only thing there, though, is that we don't seem to be able to shapeshift, so... But I think it's worth kind of considering these types of things, because I think that our role is quite similar to Friend in that, like, Gaster wants us to change the prophecy somehow. And by summoning us, he expects that to happen somehow. Just through the process of us playing. Is water Friend's weakness? I don't know what to make of this. Cats should be weak to water, since they don't like, they don't like it. But I don't know how that would fit with my normal NPC theory. It just lowers the likelihood that he's Friend, that's fine, but I just don't know what to make of it. Yeah, the Mike minigame, yeah, you save, yeah, I've already covered this stuff. Yeah, cold water, something, like something. I don't know, there's like water that comes up in the game. And rain as well, like, when, the place where it rains. There's also, like, water and darkness and fountains and shadows and stuff like that. They all are very much connected in the way that they're described. But I hope somebody can figure something out with this, because I can't figure it out. There's something I'm missing here. Okay guys, so as I'm editing the video, I'm actually, I think, almost done. I'm just adding some music and stuff. But something I noticed was, because I was going through different tracks online of Deltarune, including some of the hidden music tracks, because they don't all show up in the soundtrack, right? I noticed that there's some music that plays on some of the Spamton sweepstakes website, right? And this chair here, of course, is the chair that shows up when Ralsei is talking about, when he's talking about darkness and friend pops up, right? But what's interesting about this is that this page is called, it's called /chair, okay, on deltarune.com, which is fine. But the actual music that plays here, which isn't playing just yet, but when I click this chair, this sound is called water, which is very interesting because I've been quite puzzled about what water really is, and I don't know what to make of all of the stuff where I say that, you know, cats dislike water or whatever. Because water, to me, it seems to keep popping up in relation to darkness, and as if it's related to, like, shadows and to shapeshifting in general. Like, if you just think about water, it's a liquid, so it can morph into different shapes. Like, the thing about solids is that they don't fit into whatever their container is, but liquids do. And what's a bit more scary about this is that this same water sound is actually used in Undertale. And it's used at Waterfall, which is like, okay. But where it's also used is for River Person. In wherever River Person is, like in rooms with them, this sound is used. And that's really, really, really freaky because, of course, if Ralsei is related to Friend, well, and people think that River Person is Ralsei. That's the most common understanding, I think. So this is a little bit freaky. And of course, it's a shapeshifter, you know, on this chair, right? Oh. Oh my god, that scared me. That happened, like, really quickly. You saw that? Okay. Isn't that interesting? So, I was rechecking this scene for some reason, and I was blown away because there's a lot more here once you look at the theory and then you take a look back at this, okay? Look at that creature in the back left there. Kind of looks a bit like an amalgamate, right? But it's got something a bit odd to it. You know, like a snake shape. Yeah, it's a bit weird. And then it has a bunch of arms as well. But the thing is that in chapter 1, Jockington talked about having arms. He said if he had arms, he would take his hat off in remembrance of you, meaning Kris. And that's when I was like, well, if he took his hat off and he was the knight, well, then he would reveal his identity. And, you know, a cool hat is the knight's helmet. So it's Jockington who has speaked about if he had arms, he would remember Kris as being dead. And more than that, you see these are the other things on the picture, okay? They're all meaningful. The two eyes there are just like Jockington's eyes. They're very close together. And the random chapter 2 image where I thought, oh no, this probably doesn't mean anything. Where it shows a character with two eyes together, and I was like, that kind of looks like Jockington. And it does. It's got the two stupid eyes there and the smile. And that would be how Jockington's face would be, right? They're just, you know, flipped a bit because, like, he would just have to be flipped around for it to be like that. And the last one is just a single eye. A single eye like this guy. It's a little bit strange. And what's more than that is this is actually where the this water here is the same sound as the chair water noise. It's the same one. So that chair was referencing when friend would appear here as well. So yeah. Implications for the weird route. So I also think this means that us dying in the weird route will mean we might end up getting a replacement made for Kris and maybe Noelle too, if their bodies are recovered and, you know, sent off to the meat factory. And if that happens, that means that their bodies will end up being used for the prophecy, potentially. Or they'll be amalgamated into the Knight. And so, what could be quite interesting here is that in Chapter 6, when it says to proceed to side B of Chapter 7, that could mean that when we arrive to that point in time, it could be that like Noelle and Kris, like they basically continued on in the story, but as like a vessel version of them, and we will see the aftermath of whatever happens if that occurs. And it may also just allow the consequences of Chapter 6 to occur without the narrative burden of actually showing what exactly happened, because that's a lot harder to write. If you're able to just like as a writer, if you can just skip most of what happens in a branch, but like if you were writing like a big game like Deltarune, okay, and you wanted to explore what happens if like 2 characters died, and then you wanted to get to the point like toward the end of that to explore that, but you didn't really care to explore the preceding chapter up to that, and you didn't want to have to deal with all of the different issues that might be caused if that happens, what you would do is you would do something like this where you replace them, and then you just don't go into detail about everything that happens, and you just kind of leave it up to the audience to figure out, oh yeah, okay, well this could have happened, and that would solve that, rather than having to deal with all the contradictions yourself in a part of the story you don't even care to tell. So that might be happening as well. What is the Deltarune? So if you look at the word delta, it means change, the rune of change, and change is like shapeshifting. There's a lot of fairly simple shapes there on the Deltarune symbol. And I think the ball part is probably quite important. So to construct or use the Deltarune means to reprocess all of the characters to create a new story. I think the ultimate goal, or what basically will eventually happen, is that all of the different characters in Deltarune will eventually be amalgamated, and then the story will begin anew with a brand new set of copies. And this is basically just the process of, in a program, if you were to cut all of the characters and then paste them again, all, you know, rearranged or whatever, but then you ran them through the same program, which is the prophecy, you would, you know, come to the same result, but things would be perhaps slightly different if you changed some of their attributes. Yeah, look, the process of cutting, copying, pasting within a program are carried out in representation within the world. To copy something, you need to cut it, literally cut it up into pieces. That's what friends are for. So, yeah, like they cut things up, and that's what cutting is. And then you can paste it. The process of Deltarune is just a bunch of daemons, that's like an agent, like an autonomous agent in the computer, carrying out those tasks to attempt to change in the program. And the friends are these daemons. And when Kris summons a demon, it's like summoning friend, it's summoning a daemon. These are just natural thematic extensions of Undertale's treatment of virtual bosses as being more than just pixels on a screen. It's trying to like basically dehumanize these characters while also humanizing them through like as we play the game. So things being mixed up. Deltarune is all about things being rearranged, mixed up, and reused. The Prophecy versus Lord of the Hammer versus Dragon Blazers. The characters themselves are all from, or mostly from Undertale. Pointed, the lost tale, would children where forest followed the grow, which is just a mix-up of lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the pointed tail. I think that's it. I heard something in between, it was mixed up, the poor children. That's what one of the organics, or whoever says near where that's said. So, you know, something in between that's like Gaster, perhaps a song, Meat Factory song. It was mixed up, the poor children. I think that the Tale of Hell originally was the friend that Kris summoned, and that friend may have killed Jockington, something like that. But the Tale of Hell eventually drags Des, Asriel, and then one of them or both of them die, and then they get, meat factoried, and then, yeah, lots more happens. The Knight's born, etc. And of course, we know that the vessel's made up of mixed parts. It seems to be human parts. And when it says that the human cage with, the cage with human body parts or whatever, in this theory, like, that's just the vessel. It's got to be the vessel. And those parts make so much, they're so much more meaningful when it's said there, once you understand this theory, because it's all about the parts being used to make copies. Why Deltarune uses so many characters from Undertale? They got broken up, processed, and then reused, just like I'm saying is the objective of Gaster and the Meat Factory. Deltarune is a cut-up and shapeshifted version of Undertale, even in its letters, which is quite interesting. And then Unaltered, which I believe will be a third game we're yet to see, will be the actual origin story prior to any of the discovery of shapeshifting or construction of the Meat Factory. And I'm just guessing about this, but I think it will go over the original 3 heroes, which is probably Des, Asriel, and I'm not really sure. And Gaster's role in attempting to thwart the prophecy will begin in that game, because of whatever happens in that first game is probably going to be... It might even be more horrific than what we're seeing here, and we'll get a new sort of view of what what Gaster's doing to try to not have that happen, because it was really, really bad or something like that. And and it might be very similar to what ends up happening in this game as well, which will also be very bad. But Gaster tries to thwart it, but he just makes it worse or something, I don't know. We'd first see what a completely unaltered prophecy looks like in that original game. And this theory also explains why Deltarune can't be seen as a sequel or a prequel to Undertale in terms of sequential evidence, like showing X happened before Y. None of that matters. They've all been put into the Gaster butcher machine and remade. The parts are all there, the story is different. This also means, this also explains why the game's gonna end the same way, your choices don't matter, etc. Is that Gaster's been trying to change the prophecy for so long, and he can't do it. It just keeps getting messed up. Even though he's changing the characters, he can't alter the code itself, because he's not at that access level. This is totally random. This is Ices. I have literally no idea, except for FNAF. Toby joked about not knowing who Purple Guy was in the 6th Undertale anniversary stream. There's a character called Purple Guy as well. I don't know that much FNAF lore, so I only know rough details, but I feel like this guy's got to be important because of the graffiti with Everyman, and he's been shown so many times in such weird places, like the word search with Sans and stuff. Yeah, and Purple Guy straight up dies in the weird route, seemingly. The purple water is in the dunk tank. And yeah, I just don't know. Eggs is something I also really don't know about, despite this whole theory, and people talking about eggs with friend. I really don't know. My best guess is just that they cause issues for Gaster because they do something with the prophecy, I don't know. Potentially they might distract Friend because they're protein, and so if Friend gets distracted, well then Friend can't do their job. I really don't know, but yeah, within Touhou, Chen apparently disobeys Ran quite a bit since she's not very smart and she's animalistic, so she gets distracted. and then Ren has to manipulate her using catnip. Well, maybe if friend really likes eggs, maybe you can get friend to do something if you've got eggs. So, like, you know, maybe friend will pop up at one point and then you'll be like, no, I've got these eggs. Like, I'll give you them if you do something else or leave me alone. Like, I don't know. And yeah, people have pointed out that eggs are protein a billion times before, so I don't need to talk about that. And it's also supposed to be evidence for something happening in the past. That's very odd to me. I don't know what that is about. So, yeah, I'm still in the dark about eggs, really. If somebody has a good idea about those, I'd be interested. Mystery Man is not the original Gaster. I don't know about this one, but I'm just throwing it in here. I don't even know if I believe this. But if he fell into his creation, as Undertale says, which perhaps hasn't even happened in Deltarune, but if he fell into the meat factory, it would make sense why he was shattered across space and time. Because he's now just a combination of himself and other pieces. He could have been recombined with Friend even. As this art here says. And you've also got the memory head attack, which kind of looks like an egg head, which looks like Gaster's head. I really can't say. But yeah, I don't think that Gaster... I think whoever he is at the start, I think something happens in his science which turns him quite different in the process. Gaster talks about copying a whole ton in the save file stuff, because you can copy your files, which just goes to show that he has this ability. He has the ability to copy literally entire worlds. So if you don't think that he's got the ability to copy individual characters, like, that seems just wrong. He's got the ability to copy people. And it's got choose the target for reflection, which is like, that's like a water thing. Yeah, the dark, it conforms to the reflection, so it's like it conforms to the water. Like the water, when you look into it, it's a reflection, right? So it's a copy. So, you know, darkness itself, if it's like a dark water, it could reflect, I guess. And it says also, he says, it retained its original shape, which is quite interesting. Talking about shapes. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. There might be more Gaster stuff with that. I only took a small snippet here. So yeah, Gaster has realized that the world is a program and he has access to a high level of the program. He wants to change the code of the program. I already mentioned that. And it's quite similar to how Noelle feels, that she can't change the prophecy, she can't change who she is. So potentially Noelle's going to the same place that Gaster is. And we might go see him through that. So far, he has only all he has managed is swapping out characters with different copies. He's only using existing code and tools within the program. The prophecy continues to be the same. He is killing because he's desperate to change something and hardly believes anyone or that death is real anyway. Probably put himself in the meat factory ages ago. He fell into his own creation. The Gaster we saw was a economic... Yeah, I already said that. He doesn't have total control over his daemons, his agents at all times. They're largely autonomous and they're a bit unreliable as well, especially the friends. Which is why we see them doing sometimes stupid stuff that doesn't make sense for any plan. So why are Kris and Carol going along with the plan? Why are they going along with the Knight? You know, all of that. This is quite speculative, but I think that Kris is already dead, even before the drowning. Or at least the weird route drowning. And Friend could kill or puppet them quite easily if he wanted to. Or if they wanted to. Soul might be something that keeps them at bay within the Dark World, where Friend is more powerful potentially, which is maybe why Kris was even given that soul by Gaster, because he can't actually control like what Friend goes after exactly, but that's just a way to control it. Kris feels guilty for being responsible for others already dying, like Des or Asriel. They feel powerless, but someone, Gaster, has promised they can fix things if they just go along with the plan. So if Kris did summon the demon with Caddy, well then they could see themselves as being responsible for all of these Friend possessions going on, and for Des going missing, for potentially Asriel going missing as well. Kris might even believe that Asriel is still alive because Friend mimicked them. They might just be coping about that. They might not have even seen Asriel actually die originally. But they would still feel responsibility for Des regardless, according to this theory. So, if Gaster or his minions have approached Kris and Carol, they could tell them about a plan for breaking the prophecy. If Des is destined to die, like if the prophecy panel Susie sees says the girl will die, it may take extreme measures to break free from it. And so they go along with the plan. In this scenario, Gaster is not completely evil, he's just desperate to create change, to create a Deltarune. And in this way, it could make some sense why Des is even the knight, and like why Carol would even be okay with that, because we know from the amalgamation experiments that they actually still live even though they're supposed to die. Like they've fallen down, so these monsters are going to be dying soon. And they actually get a second chance at life by becoming these amalgamates. And so, you know, maybe this is just the strange way that they're going to get Des to live by, you know, by like sacrificing Susie or something. Or just Susie still lives, but, you know, Des is kept alive as well. So Gaster at some point discovers the player soul, the red soul, and believes that they may be able to break the prophecy with the power of a player. This could be another, you know, factor that they throw in there to try to put a wrench in the prophecy, since it seems that the prophecy has happened before even without the player. So Kris feels guilty about endangering Des in the first place, but also sees no way out of it, out to fix anything except putting their trust in the strange powerful man, accepting the red soul in replacement of their own. Kris might have lost that soul prior, I'm not really sure, but the red soul seems to be important, and Kris is accepting it for some reason, and the phone call says that Kris will, like, they can't even go into a dark world without the red soul, so, yeah. Kris, as the only human, or the only known human, is the only one who can take on this human soul without turning into some monstrous powerful hybrid, as is discussed in Undertale. So yeah, like a monster needs a human soul to break the barrier, and so Kris has, and it can also like really mess them up. Like too much determination can, usually killing them. And so Kris is, as a human, is able to take on a human soul, and so it's actually okay for them to have that. I don't know why the cage is beat up prior to the game, if that were true, but anyway, enough fan fiction. Just want to go over a couple of things here from the Mantle minigame, because I didn't go over it in any of the slides, so I just want to go over some of the footage that I've got from my own gameplay, so you can see epic gamer skills. But there won't be any sound because I didn't split the audio, which is annoying. So I have like stupid commentary going over it, which I don't want. But okay, so first off, we've got a pink cat here, and this to me is either Caddy with a Y, who I've mentioned is harmonizing at one point with Bratty. Alternatively, it could be Mew Mew, who comes along later. But there's actually two of these singing cats, I believe, down here, so it's not just this one. Now the other part we see are these cats who are all just chilling here, sort of waiting in the dark, all asleep, I guess. They haven't been activated yet. They're right in the center of everything. Yeah, so here's the other time where there's a pink cat. And that's interesting because there's two of them. And when you defeat them, it seems to unlock something, which then triggers all of the other cats to attack you. Although, the cats, like, they seem more like bats to me in the way that their face is, and how they fly and stuff, so I don't really get that, because I don't think we've seen bats at all. This room is very interesting as well, because it seems like it's like Undyne, and there's like 4 Alfies for some reason. But this Undyne is grey, which, if my theory is correct, she was brought to the meat factory and they could make a Gorner out of her. Yep, now these guys are triggered as well, because you killed the pink one. And the final point I'll make here is that this, of course, is the place where you end up fighting Friend and Eram, so... Oh, actually no, there's another point. This NPC here, this black monster, If you set the Toriel variable, they change into a dark deer, which seems a little bit like shapeshifting. So if that deer is involved with the knight and they're within the amalgam, well, there you go. Now the conclusion of the video. So I said a lot in this video, but these are the ultimate takeaways I feel most serious about. So you shouldn't treat too much of the other stuff that I said that was like speculative, that wasn't evidence straight from the game. You shouldn't treat it too seriously, but these are the things I'm most serious about, so you should take away with. Friend is inspired by Buckineko. Jockington is a friend. Friend has presence in the light world, we just can't tell for sure because they're shapeshifted. Friend will be an important part of the story going forward, with many of their actions done but not yet felt. Their task is mostly to do with changing the prophecy by swapping people out. Friend is an agent of Gaster, or one of his minions, ERAM. Friend operates like an autonomous computer program, a daemon, that cats and cuts and copies to later paste, which utilizes the meat factory in some way. The reason why Onion-san was killed and sold in the way he was something to do with Cat's dislike of onions. Shapeshifting magic is possible in the light world. Shapeshifting magic being possible in the light world completely explains the current problems facing Knight theories in a way that uses evidence we already have. The Knight is an amalgam, created from some sort of darkness like a titan, similar to the stuff Friend is made of, combined with various lighteners who are dead or fallen down. The rest of the video is just speculation based on these. Those are the actual claims I put stake in. Before you argue with the points in this video, well, I'd recommend you first actually watch the whole video first. I know it's quite long, but, you know, try to internalize it. I don't want to repeat what I've already said. But if you believe a different explanation for the Knight in particular, because I know people have a lot of, you know, feelings about Knight theories, don't do so unless you provide a better reason for who has motivation to open a fountain prior to Death's disappearance. I want to know what you think about that. By what mechanism are they able to escape with both Undyne and Asgore? This requires them to have a form in the light world while being strong enough to run and carry Asgore. I especially want that. I don't want to hear Knight theories unless they have a real good explanation for what's going on there. Why the Knight can turn into a bird, a ball, why the Knight is monochrome, why it blurs when it attacks. So it's, you know, other stuff about why is it doing these amalgam things if it's not an amalgam, and why is it not acting like every other lightener, basically. If it is just a regular lightener. And why Jockington speaks the way he does. I want to know that too. And here's the end. Okay, thank you guys for watching so much. It's been such a long video, so I very much appreciate it, especially for my first one, for putting faith in it. Leave a like if you learned anything new. I'm sure there's at least something new in this video for all Deltarune theorists to appreciate. And comment if you have thoughts on this theory, especially if you want to add to it. And please subscribe if you want another video like this one. I really can't afford to do them unless it gets interest. They take way too long. I'm making a game as well, so please stay tuned for that. And I'll release more details about that and probably release, you know, trailers or footage at some point in the future. So I'd appreciate keeping up with that. And yeah, Mew Mew has a thank you message as well on the screen. Bye for now, and I hope to see you again soon.